OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, very welcome along. It's Tuesday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, broadcasting to you wherever you are in the world. Tell us this morning in the comments where you're watching us and we'll give you a shout out. A big hello to everybody. This is Monday mornings, Tuesday mornings OTBAM. Colm is here. Colm.
Ger, hello.
It's the start of the week. Colm's only showing up for a 4-day week these days.
Yeah, I missed you last week, Ger, as well. This is our first time seeing each other in so long.
There you go.
Aw, it's cute, guys.
Shane, how are you?
Good morning, how are things?
Pretty good. We're inching towards some kind of solution to the All-Ireland football final, which happened on Sunday. We don't know what the result is going to be because we don't know whether or not it's going to be another game. They're talking if there is another game, it'll be a curtain raiser slash... I don't know, it'd have to go first, wouldn't it? You couldn't put it on...
Marsh Brosnan was talking about Saturday night.
Yeah, before
this
Dublin...
This coming Saturday night.
Before Dublin Kildare.
The lads are on the piss for days. About both sides.
Denmark were on the piss at the end of the year and then went and won the Euro. So
1992.
Do you know what?
There was 8 teams though.
Well, there's only 2 in this.
Yeah, but they have to go again. The psychological trauma of doing
But I
it
guess
again.
they're both on the piss, so they'll both be hungover playing.
So in theory, if they wait till 3:29 p.m. on Wednesday, tomorrow afternoon, before anything happens, and then 24 more hours of that before the fixture is confirmed. Thursday night, 2.5 day build up.
I don't think there could be 24 hours. I think
Surely
as soon
not,
as they
but it could
put it in, they're like, Crokes, do you want the replay or not? Are you happy? Because we're going to kick you out according to the rules because you were completely unfair.
Just fair. Integrity of the game is at stake here.
Yeah.
Do you think that at 7:30 a.m. Tuesday morning that will go right to the wire?
No, I think
mid-afternoon tomorrow. Do you think it'll be decided today?
I think Glenn will decide today.
Surely that
I don't meet too early today though.
Brolly was on Off the Ball on News Talk last night before Glenn had issued their statement. And before we knew that the GAA weren't going to take any action. Because I've read everybody talking about it this morning. Now, I think John Fogarty says the CCCC could have intervened but didn't. And they're the ones who are leaving it up to Glenn. But if Glenn appeal, maybe if I've got it wrong and if that's somebody else, I apologise to whichever of the GAA journalist has written that this morning. But that essentially the GAA could have intervened and decided not to, and Glenn are like, well, why not? That was basically the statement from Glenn. I was like, why not? Why aren't you doing this? Why are you leaving it up to us?
The CCCC are Pontius Pilate in this, aren't they? Washing the hands.
This is an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, get involved.
This is not like an under-21 final where both sides are going to go off and have amazing careers and they'll play the game. There'll always be that, I wish we'd had that appeal or we'd won the appeal or whatever. This is an All-Ireland final. It's never going to happen again. This is a tiny little club who reached an All-Ireland final and who, for whatever reason, have been unfairly treated, and now they're being asked, you need to come and you need to be a bit of an asshole here. You need to be bad losers. You need to be sore losers because otherwise you're going to make us make a decision.
Ireland were ridiculed for wanting the Team 33 stuff. They're trying to put Glenn into the whole of...
And the GAA are Sepp Blatter.
Yeah.
GAA are Sepp Blatter saying that. Well, Malik O'Rourke now will have a different stance after coming out immediately after the match saying, sure, look, basically.
I think regardless, Malachy is going to himself wash his hands of this and say, it's the club's decision, it's not mine. Which is fair.
But he came out afterwards, and I mean, as far as he's concerned, put to bed, hard luck. And now they're coming back again.
He said on a personal level, he said he wouldn't speak for the club.
He doesn't want to win in that way.
Specifically said on a personal level, that's my view, but I don't know what the club are going to do.
So if the club take the action, which we think they will,
I think
with a day and a half to go,
do we think
O'Rourke comes out and says they were right, even though I disagree with them.
Well, I don't think Malachy would disagree that it shouldn't have happened. There shouldn't have been 16 players in the
and
pitch.
so then his job is to manage the club senior team, and there's another big game left. So I'm not quite sure the point you're making.
Well, just afterwards, from what I was hearing over the weekend, he was like, well, look, happens, and
but it doesn't
we'll move
happen.
on. And
it doesn't happen. So he
different stance. It's only a minor issue. I'm just saying when he comes out, I'm sure he will.
Yeah, but well, here's the thing: you don't want to look like a bad loser. You expect that the competition's integrity is going to be managed properly. You expect that the officials will fix whatever situation there is, and fairness will be allowed to win out.
It shouldn't be Malachi's his opinion shouldn't matter anyway. It shouldn't be his decision regardless.
It isn't his decision. It's supposed to be the GAA's decision, and they have, as you say, punches piloted it over to Glenn. And I really hope that Glenn aren't somehow browbeaten into just letting it go, right? Because actually for future teams who get screwed the way they got screwed, it'd be great for them to stand up and say, no, we're going to be the little guy here, but we're actually going to put our hands up and say we stand against being screwed. And if our team get beaten on the field of play next weekend, fair enough, right?
Yeah. Well, I think Joe Brolly was making that point that 2017 Dublin Mayo this happened. There's 82,500 reasons to immediately call for a replay. Is that why the GAA aren't as quick? They're like, well, where do we put the game? How many tickets will we sell? It's a club final. Added interest in it.
Imagine how amazing it would be if Kilmacud came out today and said, actually, let's have a replay.
Brilliant. Get ahead of it.
That's a brilliant point here, Colin. Where are Kilmacud in all this? Where are they?
In the pub.
What do they stand for? What are their values in all this? Because they're the ones who had an extra man on the field of play when the game was in the melting pot in the final seconds. Are they happy to win the All-Ireland under these circumstances? We've heard nothing from them. They're keeping the head down. They're doing the traditional Irish, sure, look, we have the cup. Where are they? What do they stand for? What do they want? Because there's always going to be an asterisk behind this final. There's a very good chance Kilmacud win a replay.
Yeah.
Paul Mannion in from the start in that game, has another game under his belt. They understand exactly what the challenge is going to be. Glenn played okay. But actually, the occasion seemed to get to them, I would argue, a little bit. Yeah. But where are they in all this? What do they stand for? Is it a win at all cost mentality? We're gonna win to the point. On the front of the Irish Times this morning, 16 men. You can see them clearly when the ball is coming in. Of course it has a material impact on that final play. And if it didn't, why did you do it?
It shouldn't be Kilmacud's responsibility any more than it's Glenn's, though. This should be
out of
the club's hands.
They have to stand for something.
Yeah,
I agree with you. What do they stand for?
They can come out and release a statement and say, we are open to a replay if the CCCC and the GAA decide that.
We believe the right thing to do here.
Well, they could do that either.
Do you know?
It'd be very admirable if they did it.
It took us a while. We got there in the end. And if they do that, then everybody will be like, okay, fair enough. But their silence is a sin of omission, I would say.
Well, if I was their PR representative, I would say it'd be a reputational rebirth if he were to come out and
100%.
say, actually, not even know if you want to have replay, because that's what GAA have done. If you want to do something about it, do it. If Kilmacud say, actually, no, this is just wrong, it doesn't feel right, let's go again. And actually, if Kilmacud did lose and Glenn won, they would probably even be better again for the reputation. It was like, well, that was honourable. That was really honourable that they did that.
Well, they have a reputation. They're a South Dublin club. People have their opinions of them regardless. They have, 4,800 playing members. Mahara has 4,200 people generally in the village and surrounding areas. So we joke calling them a super club, but they are, let's be honest, a super club in terms of resources and finances.
Are they behaving super?
They're not behaving superbly at the moment. But they're in the pub celebrating an All-Ireland club final win, first since 2009. That's what they're doing right now. They had fireworks, the other night. And the point is, the players, this is not down to the players. It's not really down to the management. It's down to the Kilmacud board and the chair people. That's who has to release the statements on this issue. I don't think they're going to. The Glenn statement was complete surprise, and they were clearly baffled at the fact that they had to be the ones to push this. And it's remarkable. Like we said yesterday, we mentioned the prior incidents in Meath football and stuff where this has happened, when an extra sub has been used in a game. It's a similar enough situation. And I'm hearing the argument being used yesterday, that last move, it came to nothing. They weren't going to score a goal anyway, but that's not the point. It's not the point. There was an extra person on the goal line.
That was the stupidest point made in the whole.
100%.
There's been a lot of stupid points made in the last 36 hours, but it had no material impact on the outcome. Is like, how do you know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're such a seer. You've managed to run the AI on every single potential outcome. Flaky Crokes sucking the ball into their own net in the previous year's All-Ireland final.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to do it again. Excuse me.
All it needed was a flick into the goal, and can you imagine that ball had come off Darragh Mullen, the full forward, the man of the match?
What's he doing there?
It was off.
What's he doing there?
This is the thing.
Winding down the clock, says the manager. On purpose. That suggests purposeful intent.
There looked to be a bit of confusion on Paul Mannion's face when he saw his name on the.
Well, you can hear it on the tannoy.
Yeah, you can hear the tannoy.
We can hear it on the tannoy.
And then he looked up, and then clearly Mullen's name is called as well, and there's no movement, and all he's probably thinking is, I mean, we need to stay here. Like, we're about to win the All-Ireland. We can't concede a goal in this moment.
Morally,
ridiculous.
Morally, what's the right thing to do, right? Sort out all the logistical bullshit afterwards, but morally, what's the right thing to do? And somebody in Crokes needs to stand up and say, okay, we are where we are. We need to somehow work our way out of this scenario. And the best way to do is to be magnanimous. Like, but leaving it to the small club and putting them under all the pressure, I think that's stereotypical Irish bullshit here. Yeah. This is like, oh, we're going to push somebody down.
If this was the other way around,
we're not going to take the decision. We're going to cut you and see how far we can. I don't know.
If Kilmacud had been screwed here and Glen had 16 players on the pitch, it would be already decided.
The lawyers, the lawyers would have immediately kicked into gear.
Do you think it'll be sorted?
It would have been decided probably within 3 hours of the full-time whistle.
Why do you think that?
Well, they just would have put all the resources into it. They've enough resources. They just would have gone, this is ridiculous, make this happen. Glen, the little old club, being told to, as I said, they've less population than they have playing members. They've been forced now to make a move that they don't want to have to make.
Jeez, if they were policy enough for Conor Glastonbury to win them the game, they're policy enough to appeal. What's wrong with Glen? What's the difference between Kilmacud and Glen in terms of their right to feel that
the apparatus of social life?
Justification.
That's what happens in these scenarios. Like, a bunch of people know exactly how this thing works. If this was a school's rugby team, Colin, what do you think would have happened? An injunction straight away.
Well, I think it would have been. It wouldn't have even led to a debate because the decision probably would have been made.
The senior councils would have, like, you know,
wheels in motion straight away.
Whatever the collective noun for senior councils is, would have arrived on their massive supercars.
Isn't the whole thing here Adam Keating's point in the live YouTube comments? If it was any other sport, the result would be overturned or there would be a replay. It's just going back to the overall running of the organisation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Give us your views. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream at Off The Ball AM on Twitter. You can use the hashtag OTBAM. 7:42 this morning. OTBAM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Dominic King is standing by. We're going to talk about Everton. Michael Verney is going to join us at 8:05 for his thoughts on the latest FUBAR situation with regards to the All-Ireland Club Football Final. Damian Cassidy is also going to join us in that conversation to give us the Derry view. Sports pages with John Duggan at 8:30. MDMA, Michael Darragh MacAuley and Eamon McGee are going to join us at 8:50 this morning, and we have a deal or no deal special if we've got time, 9:15, and we'll bring you Brolly. If you missed it last night, don't worry, stay tuned at 9:30 because that is the big show in town. The big show in English football at the moment, though, is of course the fact that Everton are on the hunt for a manager, and stereotypically they have like a couple of different options. One is very different from the other. To try and tease us out and tell us a little bit about how we got there, I'm delighted to say Dominic King is with us. Dominic, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well. Good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah. Sean Dyche and Marcelo Bielsa, not the same.
No, they're very much not the same. But Marcelo Bielsa is the preferred candidate. How we'll see how. I think there's been some preliminary talks so far, and we'll see how that progresses.
What do you think is driving? Is Sean Dyche a break glass in case of emergency situation, and actually what they really want is Bielsa, and if Bielsa turns them down, they just want to get out of this season without being relegated, and so Dyche is kind of a fallback?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, if they really wanted, if Dyche was the top target, they could do it immediately. He's out of work. It could be done by now. I think it's a bit more tricky with Bielsa. So it's as ever with Everton. It's going to be. I hope it doesn't turn into some of the sagas that we've had in the past in terms of managerial appointments. I remember the first time after Ronald Koeman had been sacked by Fard Mashiri, and there was a month of toing and froing, and there's just no time for that now. Everton have got to act swiftly and get the man into who they believe is going to get them out of trouble. Is
Bielsa not one of those managers who it feels like needs a pre-season to do those grueling double sessions to make sure that the team can do all the running that he wants them to do?
Well, I mean, I've said in the piece I've written in the Daily Mail this morning about Bielsa. I mean, he's had an influence on so many coaches, his ideas on football and whatever, and the far-reaching, but I think he's going to have to be a magician to come into Everton and get them playing in 3 or 4 months the way that he wants football to be played, because it's a hodgepodge squad that's made up of players from 7 different managers. It's the short of money. They need new blood to come in and revive them, and it really is a terribly difficult situation. I
mean, the end of the Lampard tenure was I guess something that Everton fans have come to expect in recent years, Dominic, and the hatred there seems to be towards the board. It wasn't towards Frank Lampard right to the bitter end. Even interesting to watch Jimmy Carragher on Monday Night Football last night, where he says this is the worst run club in England. And I know Jimmy was a fan of Everton in his school days, but this seems to be directed very much not towards the managers. It's definitely towards the board.
Oh, that's exactly where the anger's going. I think that the very fact that there wasn't any banners, there wasn't any chanting against Frank Lampard. There was just a sort of I don't know whether there was a video on social media over the weekend of some fans speaking to Frank Lampard before he went to the London Stadium. I think it was at the team hotel, and they were lads who travel around everywhere to watch Everton, and they were saying that, this isn't your fault. He's coming at the end of an unbelievable cycle of change and disruption. He had one transfer window. He lost his best player last summer. wasn't replaced. He wanted to. He's looked for signings to come in. It straight away in January. It wasn't possible to do. He wanted to sign Danny Ings. Was very, very keen on doing that. Never got over the line because Everton could only do a loan, and Aston Villa wanted to do a straight sale. So there's been a lot of mitigating circumstances, and that means Frank isn't absolutely totally to blame for this. Yes, he's well aware of the situation, and he's been in football long enough to know that if you have a run of results like this, it's very hard for a manager to survive, and there have been some mistakes along the way. It's far deeper. Yeah, it's far deeper than just a manager. Absolutely far deeper. It's
not just though the number of managers there have been under the Farhad Moshiri reign since 2016. 3 directors of football as well, which hints at something deeper. That is the problem. That clearly leaves you wondering where does the club base itself? They clearly haven't. They don't have a platform or a basis or a common denominator that they can run with every season. It seems to be they're almost flailing, and Moshiri seems to be the common denominator in this one.
Yeah, he is. He's made the decision on this. He's made the decision to sack Frank. He's going to be responsible for appointing the next manager. We go back over the 7 years, and there's been Ronald Koeman, who was brought in to be the Hollywood manager in the Northwest for Everton, to go alongside Klopp, Guardiola, and Mourinho. That was the dream. They spent an awful lot of money in his first 12 months to try and get the right players in to get European football straight away, and they accomplished that. They got into the Europa League, but that turned out to be a disaster in terms of what they did in the group stage against Atalanta and Lyon. 6-7 years ago now, and then they went to the young up and coming manager after Marco Silva after Sam Allardyce. They went for experience in Carlo Ancelotti and Rafa Benitez. They've gone for another young up and coming English manager in Frank. It's chopping and changing from one thing to another. And as I said, the comparison that I keep is in my mind with Everton at the minute is Sunderland and Aston Villa, who went through periods of switching their managers with great haste, bringing in players who weren't of the right necessary calibre, and both of them were eventually relegated. And Everton have got it all to do in the second half of the season to get themselves out of this position.
How soon do you actually expect a decision to be made? I know you make the point that it's important to get it done before the Arsenal game, but getting the right decision, if Bielsa is the right man for the job and actually could save them this season, if they have to wait an extra week to get that, fair enough. But equally, at the same time, the clock is ticking, so it's difficult.
No, it is difficult. And there's no indication yet that Bielsa would be ready to jump on board. I mean, this is him being Everton's preferred target. and him wanting the job are two very separate things. If he can be convinced, then they have to get the deal done quickly, because, as I said, it's where are we now? 11 days away from when they play Arsenal. Every session is going to be vital. Every session is going to be crucial in terms of getting his methods and ideology across to the players. Also, you have to factor in the transfer window closes this time next week. He's going to want to bring players in. So there's so many things that are adding up against them that they've got to get right. But this is the time for decisiveness and to make strong decisions.
That the point was made on Sky last night, Dominic, about the board statement recently, where they said they couldn't attend a game for safety reasons, and Jimmy Carragher was making the point, that didn't paint the Everton support in a great light. That maybe that in and of itself was a bad move by the board. Like Gary Neville making the point that maybe, look, for safety reasons they couldn't be there, but the fact that even Mashiri attends a game at the weekend and it turns out to be Frank Lampard's last in charge, there just seems to be an overriding sense of disconnect between the fans and the club generally at the moment.
That's a brilliant word. That's a brilliant word, disconnect, because that's exactly what it is. I was at Goodison last week. It's important to stress, and did at the time, that the protest was peaceful. There was no dissent. There was no sense of trouble or anything spilling over or getting rancorous from those who stayed behind. It was just a passionate voicing of frustration. Now, I'm not taking the threats or anything against the boards lightly, because I'm aware of some of the things that have happened, not just recently, over years. So I'm absolutely not treating that lightly at all. But it's always the few that cause the problems for many, and the vast majority of Everton and the vast majority of Evertonians are fair-minded people, honest, would recoil at the idea of doing any physical harm to anybody or issuing threats or anything like that. They're passionate people, but they know what's right and what's wrong. There's idiots in every group, every set of fan base across the world, and we can't let the idiots taint the reputation of the many. Unfortunately, the idea that all Everton fans have been tarnished by this statement, I find awful, and it's just not on.
Dominic, do you think that in world football the job is looked on as a good job at the moment, or is there definitely a reticence to get involved with the current board and ownership structure? I guess if you're a Wayne Rooney figure, for example, and obviously he has a job at the moment, and we've had this conversation, if I was Rooney taking over, I want a full pre-season and I want a transfer window and several transfer windows and some guarantee that I'm not kind of trying to ride in to rescue the situation as it is at the moment, and he doesn't seem to be being linked with the job anyway. So, but I can see why other good managers would be like, well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens there if the ownership stays around, if Bill Kenwright's still around. So, they're fishing in a smaller pond. What's your sense about the future direction of the ownership and how long they're going to be around?
Again, a great question, because he's so mysterious, Farhad Moshiri, that you wouldn't know. He's made it clear that he would welcome investment, to help with the build of the new stadium, to give Everton the resources they need to be competitive. He's pumped an awful lot of money in. You can't say that about him. He hasn't been shy in putting his hand in his pocket. What the future holds with him, what his visions for the club are, other than taking Everton to the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock in 2 seasons' time, or in the season after next. We don't know what he's thinking. But Everton should be a job that every hungry manager in football strives to be a. Brilliant fan base, passionate. If a manager could come in and make Everton a force again and bring success, they'd be almost deified. Everton fans are aching for a team to be proud of, and I would think if you were ambitious and you and you knew your football, it would be a wonderful job to take in the right circumstances. But unfortunately for Everton, in the last 5-6 years, the circumstances just haven't been right for anyone.
You've been writing the Daily Mail, Dominic, about conversations that apparently have happened between Lampard and Moshiri since the West Ham game at the weekend. Even to the point that has Moshiri been discussing recruitment with Lampard and getting his thoughts, which, you know, if he's getting his last little bits and thoughts from Lampard before he kicks them out the door, seems, for want of a better word, a bit slimy.
Well, I'll just tell you what I've reported. It's the discussions that were going on over the weekend involved them asking Frank what he thought was needed, where needed strengthening before the window closes, and that's what's created the state of flux. On Sunday night, the reports about him being on the brink, which as I said, Frank knows the situation in football in terms of. If you have a run of results like that, then there's nothing you can do as a manager. It only heads one way. But it was a very sort of dispiriting 48 hours, I think, and I just feel so sorry for Frank that he's been put through a situation like this.
In terms of his ability as a football manager, though, he does have to take some responsibility for what's happened, because he had the off-season to build and create a culture, and there's definitely some decisions that he's made recently where off the back of a good performance he'd change the team and the team wouldn't be as good. So it's not like he's blameless. No,
I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that he is absolutely absolved of blame, because if you are a manager and you have that weakness of results, and of course it comes back to you. He has made mistakes. I think he would recognise that in some games. But you talk about pre-season and whatever. One window at the end of one window at the end of a season that they only just about escaped relegation, and a truncated pre-season as well, given the World Cup, and one transfer window was never going to be enough to solve the problems that he inherited. Not a chance. It was the same with Rafa Benitez. What was Rafa Benitez going to do in with one transfer window and £2 million to try and turn things around? It's impossible. What Everton having to do is sell the best players to bring people in. That's what happened with Luca Dean last year. They sold him to bring two fullbacks in the January window. They sold Richarlison to bring players in the summer. I dare say something like that might happen again before this window closes. So if you're constantly selling your best players and not bringing in players of a either comparable quality or better quality, then you're only going to go one way as a team, and that's what's happened.
One last thing I did want to touch on, in your own piece you talked about Onana saying that Lampard is still the best player in training. That's a bit of a double-edged sword. There's a bang of Glenn Hoddle and bang even Roy Keane not being happy to, No, I'll be clear about that. That was my words. It wasn't. Onana said that about him. I just thought it was. Frank wasn't like sort of it didn't have that kind of attitude like Hoddle or anything like that. It was just striking the fact that Lampard was such an amazing player, and you could still see that at 44 that he had everything. What I mean is the fact that he should, the manager shouldn't be the best player in football in a football squad, should he? No. There should be players coming through that that can do more than him. I do wonder, was he ever tempted to register and pick himself?
Well, there's an irony, isn't it, that they've not only lost the best, they've lost the manager, but they've also lost the best midfielder.
Dominic, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for making time for us. Cheers. It's Dominic King of the Daily Mail giving us his thoughts on the situation at Everton. It's 8 o'clock this morning. It's
a bit mad when he talks to Everton, even when they got rid of Richarlison. And I know they had to do that for financial fair play reasons and stuff, but like they brought in Neil Maupay and Dwight McNeil, who've been crap, and then you have Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been injury plagued. So the recruitment, not all the blame can go on Shane necessarily, but the manager has to take some, and that's where he's gone.
Could have sold Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And look, there's been loads of really bad decisions that are made. It will be interesting to see what Lampard does next and whether or not he just Because, like, you do forget sometimes these guys are really, 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 really rich.
Yeah.
And they don't have to work.
No, they can take a year or two out.
He can just go and play golf and be on TV.
Look what Sean Dyche has done. He hasn't been in the game for a while, so he can afford it. Hopefully Seamus Coleman comes out of it.
Sean Dyche is nowhere near as rich as Frank Lampard.
No, of course.
Do you know what I mean? Like, Lampard has to really, really, really want to work.
Yeah.
The money that they guys... so he was on 80 grand, 100 grand a week for 10 years. That's a lot of cash.
It's not bad. It's okay.
You know... Anyway, I like Lampard. That's the thing. And if he decides to retire and be a pundit, he'll get work non-stop.
Yeah. Let him at it. I think he'll take a bit of time off and then come back into the game as a manager. I think he'll do the whole Jose Mourinho thing, do the rounds on the media and then come back in. But yeah, best of luck to him. I think a lot of people are similar lines. They like Lampard as a person. But it's kind of sad to see things happen to Everton because they're one of the Premier League big clubs that you're like, well, they're always there. So it would be bizarre to see them go back. I've seen it. People suggest, maybe would it be good for them if they went down to the Championship for a season and, they can kind of restart. But I don't think that would be a good thing for Everton at all. They need to stay in the top tier, and that's why they're making the move now, changing the manager.
Right. If you've got a view on the various stories that we're covering this morning, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on YouTube, or you can get us on Twitter as well. And just trying to make sense of some of the comments that are coming through. Issel Cody, there was a good one there. Not if it was any other sport. If it wasn't a powerhouse with resources their opponent can't match, it would have already been fixed for a rematch.
Yeah.
All Kilmacud need to do is issue a statement acknowledging they would be happy to have a replay. Do you think that's we certainly haven't spoken a lot about this, but where's their leadership? What are they saying about the situation here? Because, like, granted, in years to come, obviously, people will be like, was there something about that? And this will fade. Of course it will. But at the same time, you'll know that you had 16 men on the field of play for the final deciding play of the game. Yeah. You'll always know that.
Won't feel good.
I don't think... maybe it does feel good. Maybe that's the difference in life. Maybe that's it, like, we did what we needed to do. We got out there and we won because we're winners.
This isn't meant as a pointed thing towards Kilmacud. I don't think the Ben players would feel good if it was the other way around.
I don't think
so. And I think they would have come out and said...
And I can't see the Kilmacud players feeling delighted about this. They can't be. Like, they didn't work all year to have an extra man on the field of play at the end. They didn't.
100%. Shawnee Riley's made a comment. Only fair outcome is a replay in Celtic Park and Glenn get Damian Comer. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean... It's got people exercise. Jesus, when you see a GA story on the front and back pages of the papers for 2 days after the final.
It's very interesting because it didn't make the front of the Irish Times sports section yesterday, but it's on the front of the whole paper today. So obviously, the whole of Kilmacud are buying papers today. Checking what's this about? What is this about?
That's the demographic, is it? The Kilmacud demographic, the Irish Times.
Certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Well, look, it's...
honestly,
it's David Goliath stuff.
We've got a load of people who I think are Kilmacud fans going, this isn't a big story. It's the linesman's fault. But, like, do you honestly believe that? Like, deep down, do you honestly feel like the right thing to do is to take the cup, take the gold medals this year, and go, yes, we got the gold medals, or because I don't know, you heard that story about the silver medals at halftime.
Yeah,
the old Joe Kernan trick, I believe, that they were pulling. Everybody knows the Joe Kernan trick, right?
Well, yeah,
it's famous.
O2 All Ireland team talk. Like I know Robbie Brennan talked about having the Kilcoo photo on his phone of Kilcoo lifting the trophy. I'm sure he will or will have already have changed it to Shane Cunningham, the Kilmacud players lifting the trophy. But every time he opens his phone now, he's going to be looking at that going,
16 men, 16 and a half.
It's a reminder every time he opens his phone. Every time he gets a call, he's going to be like, Jesus, that's the final there was so much controversy about. This controversy is not going to go in. Like, if it comes tomorrow and Glenn turn around and say, we're not taking this any further, it doesn't end there. Maybe it ends there in terms of process and GEA process, but look, controversy's not going to end.
Colin Keys is making a great point, right? Like, a replay would safeguard against the future abuse of the rule.
Yeah. Like, you said it yesterday. What if a team...
I'm sorry, but if you're not cheating, you're not trying. We got a load of texts like that yesterday and a load of tweets, like, and so that's how this all works. Mm-hmm. We're all supposed to be cheating against each other because this is sport and we're supposed to just kill each other. That's all we stand for, just killing each other.
Yeah,
I'm gonna eat your bloody corpse here, Shane.
Please don't.
I mean, is it really? Is that? So, like, is it going to be acceptable then one of the rules is that we'll fine you something. Oh, actually, we won't do anything. I don't really understand the whole not doing anything. Is it because it deliberately wasn't in the referee's
I thought it was 3 solutions. Fine, kick them out.
But only if you why don't the CCCC just stand in and go, we've decided what the story is here because we're in charge. We know what we're doing and we're in charge. Maybe I don't know.
The equivalent is, so say people are saying, it's only one move. It's one move towards the end of the game. Say at the end of a soccer match, do you know when a team are looking for a goal and they send the keeper up?
Yeah.
They send the keeper up, so they have 11 men in the box, but the opposition have 12 men. They just throw someone onto the line. Of course it is an impact. It doesn't matter if it's one move or if it's 5 seconds or 10 seconds.
But again, if we've decided that win at all costs is all we stand for, then every team in the country is going to be like, I'm going to send an extra man on and let them count afterwards and see what the crack is.
If this doesn't go to a replay, then I hope when I'm in Castleblaney next Saturday night watching Monaghan and Armagh in Division 1 of the Alliance Football Leagues, if Monaghan are say 2 points down,
why aren't they sending an extra man on? You're not trying.
I would like to think I will see Vinnie Corey send it on a 16th man. Because it's in the rules, obviously.
5 minutes past 8 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. We are continuing with this story in a moment. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen store near you with new Braeburn locations popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. After the break, we'll continue with the story. We can see by your comments coming in this morning you want more of it. We're going to be joined on the line by the Irish Independent's Michael Verney and Derry's 1993 All-Ireland winner Damian Cassidy. First, Miguel Delaney and Jonathan Wilson joined Richie last night talking about Arsenal, who really do look like becoming champions. We're going to crown them, we're going to anoint them. Nothing possibly. There's no chance of Devon Lock situation. Let's go. Back after this.
That last 20 minutes was incredibly impressive from a performance point of view. And so there's huge amounts of positives to be taken from that. The fact they win the game is incredibly important and impressive because it maintains that lead. I mean, I know they've got a game in hand, but if a lead had been down to 3 points, suddenly you're thinking, City are only within, they're within one win of them, and then maybe they get a bit twitchy. And Ketia getting the winner in the way he does, suddenly, he sort of becomes cast almost as a Christopher Ray figure or a Martin Hayes figure or a Federico Makeda figure as the slightly unlikely figure who gets crucial goals along the way. And imagine the reaction to him had he not got that goal, and everybody remembered the save that was made from De Gea after 84 minutes, and then it'd be like against Newcastle, and Ketia has the late chance to win the game, and he's missed it, and there's 4 points left on the table, and how critical could that be? So all of those things are hugely important. The thing that just slightly concerns me with Arsenal, and maybe this is to do with us as much as it is to do with Arsenal itself, is that it almost feels like we're in the running already, and every point, every match is being treated as crucial as this great test. There's still half a season to go, and I'm not sure how long you can maintain that sort of nervous energy, that emotional intensity. I do worry that because of the World Cup and the timing of it, and the fact we're sort of 3 games behind where we'd normally be at this stage of a year, that the people have gone slightly early with the run-in. But having said that, 5 points clear with a game in hand. They're in a great position. And if they replicate their performance from the first half of the season, second half of the season, they will win the title. The maximum points City can get is 99. They've got 50 at the halfway stage. So in that sense, they can start ticking the games off. 17 wins, they win the title.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Koigig Pod on OTB Sports.
I've had to basically say to them, if I can't get childcare, I'll not be coming to training. If a Sunday was to come and obviously if Ivan was at work or whatever and I couldn't get childcare, then I can't even play that game.
It's mad to think of, really. It seems kind of archaic.
It actually hasn't progressed at all.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
9 minutes past 8. Michael Verney is with us. Michael, good morning to you. How are you?
Gents, how are you?
Yeah. This is a remarkable story, even by the multitude of remarkable stories that we have got over the years. It's an All-Ireland final. It's not like, this isn't a run-of-the-mill Leinster Championship match between 2 Division 3 or Division 4 sides that ultimately is a little bit of a storm in a teacup. But this is kind of brings together so many of the different aspects of GAA life. It's a tiny, tiny little parish town against the might of Kilmacud Crokes, and the GAA have not intervened for whatever reason. What's your understanding of why the CCCC didn't intervene? Were they not allowed to?
Like a governing body not being allowed to intervene or make a statement, I think that's fairly fanciful to think that they couldn't make a statement on it. I find it absolutely unbelievable that they've just, they've hopped the ball almost between Glen and Kilmacud now and basically abdicated all responsibility. I find it bemusing, really. And now it's left to, like you're talking about, Kilmacud potentially making a statement, and the Glen have made a statement last night and are going to make, some sort of a judgment or a ruling, or they're going to make a decision in the next couple of days. But take that away from the clubs. Take that responsibility away from the clubs. Make a decision yourselves. Say that there's been a 16 player on the pitch and that you're going to make a decision, be it replay, be it forfeit, be it fine, and take the responsibility away from Kilmacud Crokes. Kilmacud Crokes are almost been, painted as the villains in the piece now. But to me, there were 16 players on the pitch, but it's very, very simple and very, very basic. It happens in underage games. It happens in, college games, Fitzgibbon games. Player comes in, player comes off. And I'm talking about games where there's no fourth official, where there's no, referees, coordinators and this type of thing at the game. Player comes in, player comes off. Player comes in, does not come in until the player comes off. There's no way in an All-Ireland club final that something like this should have been allowed to happen by the GAA, first and foremost. I don't even know, does Darragh Mullen know that he's been substituted? It's the last minute of an All-Ireland club final. The last thing he's thinking about is whether I'm coming off the field or not. The only thing he's thinking of is whether I can have an impact in this final play. And basically, the play should be stopped until Darragh Mullen exits the pitch, the middle of the pitch, and then player comes in. And to me, this is a problem that the GAA have created. It's not a problem that Glen have created, and it's not a problem that Kilmacud Crokes have created.
We approached the GAA press office yesterday, Mick, and the response I was getting was essentially that because it's all still very much up in the air, they have a limit on what they can say, and clearly nothing they could say at that point. That was their argument. But it strikes me that the silence is screaming now. The GAA need to come out and say something.
Yeah, I can't believe they haven't said. The first thing that I only saw the games back on Monday morning because I was working elsewhere on Sunday, and the first thing that's coming into my head here is, are the GAA going to admit any wrongdoing in this? To me, I personally do not think Kilmacud Crokes have done anything wrong or intentionally done anything wrong.
I'm not sure, right? Because they are. There is a quote from in various papers about how they were trying to kill the clock at the end. At the end of the game, you're trying to kill the clock, and that would imply, and that's attributed to the manager. That would imply some sense of knowing that you're taking your time to get off the field, and it's actually their job to know if they have 15 men on the field as much as it is the official. So I don't think they're blameless in this, but I understand your point of view, and we can toss that up. Certainly the main culprit is the GAA's organisation in saying, okay, if Malachy O'Rourke is on the sideline saying, hang on, there's 16 men on the pitch, we get to take that 45 again. If they'd taken the 45 again, everybody would have gone, no big deal, game over, whatever happens, happens. Maybe they score a famous last minute goal and Kilmacud are broken again, I don't know. Maybe they don't, maybe it goes wide, who knows, right? But I do think that Kilmacud have some blame in this, and that's why I'm saying they should come out and say, and be the leaders in all this. Are they, where's their leadership? I
hold on, Roger, the leaders in this are the GAA.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think the onus is on Kilmacud to say anything. It's not been smart as well. Kilmacud, who have just won an All-Ireland club title and are, I'm sure, absolutely, celebrating the bejesus out of it the last 24 hours or whatever it is. Obviously, there's a bit of I wouldn't say there's a stain on it now, but there's a distinct likelihood that if Glen appeal, that a replay will be made. But I don't think the onus should be left on Glen to make that decision. And again, that probably comes down to, I don't know, is that an emotive decision or is that a ruthless decision to say? Is it an emotive decision to say, listen, we had a chance at the end, the extra player on the pitch didn't in our eyes have any impact on the play, we lost the game fair and square? Or is that a ruthless decision to say Kilmacud had 16 players on the pitch, we're appealing and we're probably going to get a replay? So a lot will come down to the individuals involved here as well and the feelings that they have on it. If it's someone that's very cold and calculated, they might be like, no, they broke the rules, we're looking for a replay. If it's someone who's like more emotive and wants to take their beating, as is always said in the GAA, they will probably not appeal and they will not get a replay.
Yeah. I mean, I would tend to agree that with Colm Key's piece today in your paper, that a replay would safeguard against the future abuse of the rule. We've Damian Cassidy on the line with us this morning as well, an All-Ireland winner in his time with Derry. Damian, we just wanted to get a sense of what Derry people think about this. Good morning to you, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks very much. Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. So quick after the game, there was that typical GA thing where the best team won, leave it on the field and all of that type of stuff. But I think over the past 36 hours now, really, we're talking about or slightly more, the shift is changing to. I think it's changing to a position where people realise now that Glen have a very legitimate case. I think it's clear cut. The 17 players, Mannion situation, I think is very simple. It was a really technical thing, and he wasn't involved in the play, but the extra player definitely had an impact on the resulting play that occurred. And I think there's a shift moving towards where Glen should possibly consider taking that appeal.
I know we're saying, Damian, the onus shouldn't be on Glen in the first place to have to make this decision, but say this was Balahi, say it was your Balahi team and the exact same thing had happened. Would you be protesting this result?
Well, interestingly, I had a conversation with a Glen, prominent Glen club member yesterday, and I suppose as I said earlier on, I shifted, and it's not very often you get to an All-Ireland final, and there's Glen. We would have a good history ourselves in terms of the competition, and yet we've only appeared in 2 finals. And once in a lifetime group of players coming along, that club was putting massive emphasis on underage coaching. They came from an intermediate position at the senior for quite a while, and just last year they won their first club title in the history of the club. So these opportunities only come along once in a lifetime, and they literally are once in a lifetime opportunities, and they have a legitimate position to challenge that due to the incompetence of the GAA. And my view is, whenever you get to something like that at that stage, you just have to grab it with both hands and hang on for pure life. So my view will be, I think we'll be appealing it. Now, the interesting comment that was made by that official was, we appeal it, and then we'll make a decision about whether we replay it or not.
Right, because they're fairly confident they're going to win, and whether or not they... here's the thing, right? That would be terrible, I think, because I think that they should replay. I think everybody thinks a replay would be fair at this stage on both teams, given that Kilmacud were winning the game. But I definitely agree with you, Damian. I think there's a difference here. If Kilmacud had used an extra sub, right, and it had been 7 subs instead of 6, people might be able to think, okay, well, that's an administrative error, and that's probably responsibility of the linesman, and then it becomes a bit of a grey area and you leave that on the field of play. But this is an extra man. This isn't just like a mistake was made. Like you have an extra man on the field of play at a key play. Literally, the opportunity for Kilmacud to have the same heartbreak that they've had. We saw in the semi-final the exact same thing happen, where the ball is floating in under the crossbar, and it requires somebody to save it. I think it's too meaningful to let go.
Yeah, look, and I seen the Ulster club game with Niamh Connell and Cargan, and Cargan got a goal literally in the last 10 seconds of the game to force a draw, and then they won the game in extra time. And an extra player in that box in that congested space changes the whole entire dynamic of what can happen. And that's exactly what happened. Regardless of the length of time, that's irrelevant. The play's still there, the opportunity's still there, and if space is denied and to the advantage of the opposition, that's a clear breach in my view.
Damian, I don't want people to think I have a tinfoil hat on saying this, because I don't, but the phrase anti-northern bias comes up quite often when it comes to the GAA. If this was the other way around, if this had been Kilmacud that had the 60, or the Glen that had the 16 man on the pitch, do you think it would have been resolved quicker and more ruthlessly?
It's a hard one to know, to be honest with you. It really is a hard one to know. The one thing I suppose that you can say is that we do have a wee bit of a history of shooting ourselves in the foot, and this is an opportunity that they had to make it nice and clean, take away the controversy, be in control of the association and outcomes, and that's their responsibility to do that. And I just think it's so crummy to pass it back to Glen. I genuinely do. I just think it's absolutely just not a right thing. As an employer, whenever you have things going on in your workplace, it's clear cut. You have the responsibility of the employer to deal with it. You can't bury your head in the sand and hope it will go away. Generally, it escalates and becomes a big problem, and this is now what we're seeing.
Just on Damian's point there, it's so watery, such a watery non-reaction from the GAA in an organisation where we teach people to take responsibility both on and off the pitch for their lives, for their play, for their skills, for strength and conditioning, for everything else. And the GAA look to have completely abdicated responsibility now and just thrown the ball over to Glen. Yeah, it doesn't smell nice to me at all.
It speaks to an absence of leadership, really, Michael, doesn't it?
Yeah, you'd have to say it, because they could have just come out Monday morning with some sort of a statement and said that the CCC are currently launching an investigation into the events in Croke Park yesterday, and we will make a decision in due course.
Well, the GAA are quite quick to make decisions when it comes to money, and Joe Brolly was making the point on the show last night that if this was Dublin Mayo 2017 and this had happened, there's 82,500 reasons why the replay would have been called straight away, and that's you can't argue with that. I mean,
that's right.
If they were filling Croke Park, this would have been decided straight away.
Yeah, and it's a real thumb in the face of the biggest day in the club calendar as well. Because as you say, if it had been an All-Ireland senior final, I'm sure there would have been something out yesterday morning, maybe even Sunday evening, maybe even the 45 would have been retaken, such as the gravity of the situation. But to me, there's a lot of things I didn't like about Sunday. I didn't like the state of the pitch for an All-Ireland club final. I didn't like the fact that how did they realise that Darragh Mullen had to come off after the 45? How did they not know beforehand? There's this isn't like a college's game where there's consternation on the sideline and there's lads going everywhere and lads running on and off. This is an All-Ireland club final with so many officials involved, the cream of the crop, and it's amazing to think that we've allowed this to happen. And as Damian says, we seem to miraculously find a way to shoot ourselves in the foot at different chances when the opportunity arises, and we've done so again. Yeah,
Damian, that transformation in viewpoint that you talked about when you just joined us, about how we leave everything on the field because the best team won, and that was Malachy O'Rourke's immediate post-match reaction. What do you think was the catalyst for change in the Glen officials? Do you think so? And I suppose the corollary to that is it your understanding then that you think they probably will appeal?
Well, I'm not going to turn around and say what I think Glen are going to do. I have been talking to one prominent person, and that was prior to the invite to come into the show. The change probably is that none of this is Glen or Kilmacud's fault. I think the moral argument is starting to recede, and I think it's a situation of things been done right and done fair is starting to overtake the situation. And as I said already, that particular person said, my view is, and he would carry a bit of weight, is that we take the appeal and then we make the decision themselves about whether we'll play the replay or not if we're awarded it. And that was very interesting, I thought, on his part to say that.
Damian, what's your take on people who are coming out and making the, frankly, in my opinion, bizarre argument that the final play was just one play, it was only 15-20 seconds, didn't have a massive impact, someone being on the line. Like you were a wing half forward in that great Derry team in '93 and with Balahi as well. In fact, you played Kilmacud yourself in the All-Ireland Senior Club football final in '95. Just as a forward, as someone involved in those moves, just how impactful could it be having an extra player involved and an extra defensive player on the line?
Well, apart from playing, I've been involved in management for quite a while now, and I've seen so many games. Genuinely, I've seen so many games won in the last 5 and 10 seconds of the game, and people saying that, I don't think they fully appreciate the chaos. I mean, the games and as managers and coaches, and we try to control as many outcomes as we can, and there's a lot more structure has come into the game that has allowed you to try and control what's going to potentially happen in terms of your plays. But there's periods in games where it's absolute chaos and nobody has any control. And what we had in that last period of the game was chaos. And Kilmacruds were, they were all over the place. They were just defending for their lives, and that opportunity was there for Glen to take something out of the game. And when a space is congested as that, you put one more player into it, it changes the entire dynamic of what potentially could happen. And every outcome creates a different outcome, and that's just the natural way of things. So that's what's happened there. Mullen was on the line, that made that space more congested. There might have been somebody else who would have dropped into his position, which would have created another space in front of the 6-yard box. Those are things that will never be answered.
Yeah.
And as I said already, from my experience in playing and managing quite a while, that I've seen so many games in the last 5 and 6, 10, 8, 15 seconds, one or loss. I referenced Carrigan and Eve Connell and Ulster Club this season. Nothing was impossible, and nothing is until the final whistle, and that opportunity was taken away.
Yeah, the All Ireland Club hurling final last year. It's not like there's loads of precedent for last minute goals, beating teams who are trying to defend the lead. Damian, I know you got to go in just a moment here. Just on that point about then we'll decide if we offer a replay or not. Like the rule initially used to be very clear. As soon as you breach, if you have an extra man on the field of play, you get kicked out, you forfeit. There was no wiggle room. So the rule changed to allow some wiggle room, and I guess if the GAA had stepped in and said we're dictating a replay, then there wouldn't have been any kind of sense of offering. It would have been like, whereas now all of a sudden, if there is an appeal, then it's up to Glen to decide what happens.
Yeah, and that's well, I suppose if there isn't, it is up to Glen. I just think it's rotten. I just genuinely do. It should have nothing. This point in time should have nothing to do with Glen, because they did nothing wrong. And Kilmacud, in fairness to them, what's happened is it's been a mess, as you already referenced. The official is making a mess of it. So it just doesn't sit right. And I think the history books will be there, and people will move on in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 9 years, 10, whatever. But Glen will be left with this legacy of a mess and one of the biggest days of that club's generation. So,
is it too late for somebody to step in and say, right, we've just decided we're going to fix this, there's going to be a replay, lads? Because if they allow the appeal to come through, that could be an absolute disaster. Because Glen might decide, you forfeit the game, we win it, and away we go.
Well, that's what they're going to do. I mean, at this stage, they've dug themselves a hole, and they're not going to stop digging. They're just going to let it run and leave the ball with Glen's court. Make no mistake about it.
Right. That I hadn't even considered that scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, Damian, we'll let you go. Thanks a million.
Not at all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Damian Cassidy there, of course, an All-Ireland winner in his time, Blahy clubman. I guess that's the view from Derry. Michael, what do you make of that? Because I definitely hadn't thought of that scenario where, the rules, I don't know, maybe the CCC just take the appeal and decide that it's going to be a replay, and it's up to them then.
Well, I hope the ball isn't thrown back into Glen's court in that case, where it's going to, there's a potential for them to actually win the fixture and win the All-Ireland. When I'm sure that's not what they want. I'm sure they just want, they want to replay the game. I'm sure they just love to even have that last playback, let alone play the game again. Have that last playback against with just 15 men on the line, and that would have been smart. The ball was very close to going into the corner, and there's a rule of it's like unintended consequences. It's not a coincidence that the ball went to that side, because there was probably an overload on the other side of the goal, partly due to the extra man, if you get me.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm sure there was a tactical reason why the ball was floated in towards that side and not the other side, because there was an overload on the other side, due in part to the extra man. But saw someone tweeting if this is going to be a replay to this game, that 13 years later, Louth are finally going to get their day back, and they're going to replay the famous Leinster final. And again, like, that leaves such a sour taste amongst Louth people and amongst the rest of the country. And again, the onus was probably put on Meath at the time, and Meath came out as the bad guys in it. Whereas, like, the GA should have made a call on that as well. Yeah. And like, if we haven't learned from that, you think we would have learned by now. And you asked, Ger, is it too late for somebody to come up, put their hands up and make a call? No way is it too late. It's not even 48 hours since the game was fixed to be played, so of course it's not.
Get Thierry Henry out of retirement as well, I think. Play Ireland, France, all over.
Who's going to do that? Is it the president? Is it who is it? Is it the director general? Like some,
it's probably a combination of people: president, director general, chair of the CCC. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's
anyone.
You've seen, like, lads, calls, like, look at how quickly the split season was made, and even the COVID championship was made. Things can be done very quickly when they have to be done, and you know what I mean. There's not as much red tape as is made out when you actually have to go and make a call quite swiftly, and your hand is forced.
So just to outline the nightmare scenario might be here, where Glen issue an appeal. We all know the appeal is going to be successful, and then after that they're like, okay, well, we have to have an outcome here, and Glen at that point go, well, we're not replaying it now because
it's ridiculous. If the appeal is successful, the game has to go ahead. The replay has to go ahead.
You would hope so,
automatically.
But I don't know if I don't know. The rule is.
We're going to make Glen make two decisions.
I still don't understand why the CCCC couldn't just decide, as opposed to having to wait for the. I don't understand why it wasn't in the referee's report first off. That seemed strange, and then I also don't understand why the CCCC didn't just make a decision immediately, as opposed to leaving it to Glen. Like, is the culture just that we are terrified of making decisions? Is that like, and where does that come from?
Yeah, I maybe so. We've been quite poor in the last couple of years. If you look at, like, the swell of public support that was needed for that Liam Miller charity game to be allowed to be moved to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. You look at all the different things. It's Newbridge or nowhere. It was only when, you know, Cian O'Neill goes to an RTE studio in Cork and makes this plea, and they're saying they're not playing the game, and all of a sudden things start changing, and the GA, who made a statement to say that game will be going ahead, all of a sudden that changes. And you were talking about, you know, what's the reason for the swell of support or the momentum change? Like, this isn't like Jimmy Cooney with Offaly in '98, where everybody knows straight away the game has been blown up early, and Offaly people head onto the pitch and are, you know, not going to leave until they get what they want. This is the sort of thing where, you know, only television viewers probably knew what was going on. People in the stadium wouldn't have really known what was going on at the time, if you get me.
Yeah.
And it's just as time has moved on, then people are realising more and more. Maybe, as you said, you take your beating originally, and then it's like, no, come here, this isn't right.
You bring up Offaly Clare, right? If I'm Crokes, I'm looking at Offaly Clare in '97 going, Jesus lads, no offence here, but I don't think the best team won over those games, Michael. I would say that Clare team was an all-time. It wasn't '97, was it? What year am I?
98.
98. I got the year wrong. Yeah, that was one of the all-time great Clare teams, and I think they left that behind them. But here's the thing: if I'm Crokes, I'm terrified of a replay with the public swell of support, unless I'm the one who goes out with the offer. I'm rallying the troops and I'm saying, stop drinking. Tuesday club's cancelled. We're training tonight just in case.
There's so many moving parts in this, isn't there? Like, I remember Offaly, there was word came through that there could be a replay on the Monday, and they were going to go training. And I think Johnny Pilkington and a couple were a bit too far gone at that stage to go training that day. But they eventually got back. But look at the public support for Offaly at the time. Like, Offaly, I went to that game in Thurles in '98. Offaly were not going to be beaten that day. No way. By hell or high water, they were not going to be beaten. There was more Offaly people at that game than I remember at any other game. And they just had all the energy. Whereas Clare was like a balloon where you just, you took all the air out of it. And it's probably turning into a similar scenario should there be a replay. I don't know when there's going to be a replay, whether it's going to be next weekend potentially, or 2 weeks' time or whatever. But you would imagine a lot of the momentum is with Glen. You have to think about it from a Kiln O'Cud point of view. You're going in to play another game, which you think you've already won, potentially. You've celebrated it like you've won.
Well, that's why I'd get out in front of that. That's why, apart from I think they should show leadership and say, we know where this is going to go. We can see the writing on the wall. We can see it's unfair, and we can see that we've been, for whatever reason, we have benefited from an unfair advantage, right? If you want to manage that, get out in front of it and say, right, let's get training. Let's take away that moral sense of chip on the shoulder that Glen have. Let's be the ones that offer them the replay, and then the ball is in their court. Like at a strategic level, if you're thinking about it, the ball is in their court, and they can. We're just going to take it off you, and then all of a sudden this whole conversation flips.
Yeah, they shouldn't have to do that. It's the kernel of the point. But I understand where you're coming from. You're obviously looking for some sort of a strategy operations manager thing or something like that. Crisis.
I'm happy here.
How to deal with a crisis. How to come out smelling like roses in a crisis.
Well, I tell you what, Mick, the psychology of a replay will be fascinating. But the fact that we were talking about it earlier, it would set dangerous precedent. Maybe dangerous is too strong a word. A ridiculous precedent, because then all of a sudden you have people like Damian Cassidy, say, preparing his Balahi team to play Glen next year in the Derry Senior Championship, and he can throw on the 16th man with no fear of repercussions or a replay or anything. It would send such a wrong message.
Yeah, no, I totally get where you're coming from at that point, and that would be completely nipped in the bud and said, okay, Kilmacud had 16 players on at this time, and they were, they lost an All-Ireland title and were forced to replay the game. And if it even entered anybody's head to do it at any stage in a game, it's gone out of your head straight away, because you see the repercussions of it. And potentially there could be a replay, there could be a fine, there could be several things in this depending on what's going to happen. But it's definitely a story that's going to rumble on for another while.
Well, certainly I thought that the view in Glen, coming from the Irish News early yesterday, was that, look, they were just going to let it go. But it seems like from what Damian Cassidy was saying, that they've changed their minds, that they've been listening to people saying it's not fair, 16 versus 15 is just not fair, and so it feels now, from what he's saying, that an appeal is more likely than not.
Yeah, that's what it looks like at the moment. Anyway, I would have said it's the percentage chance of an appeal coming, I think, is increasing as every hour passes by. I like to think of Conor Glass and the lads currently doing laps around the pitch somewhere. They're off the drink already. They're already training for it. They're laps around a bar, I'd say, more like it, Shane.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe it's better that it's weekend after this one if there is a replay.
Michael, good stuff.
I think so.
Thanks a million.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a million, folks.
Michael Verney there. David Moran should be talked about later. What a legend, great player, says Jack Nolte. David Moran should have had a whole show. Maurice Brosnan was brilliant on talking with Richie last night. He specifically was talking about, I can't remember which game it was now, but the number of kick passes that Moran made, which basically helped transform the entire sport, and that he felt like he deserves, for services rendered to the game of Gaelic football, David Moran deserves special praise, and I think he's right, and hopefully we'll do justice to that. It just feels like this story is too big at the moment, and it seems to be evolving and developing, and it was interesting that Damian Cassidy has been talking to somebody from the club, and that their mood is hardening.
Yeah, 100%. And you kind of knew that even when you were listening to Malachy O'Rourke after the match. You were like, well, as time passes here, the Glen mood is going to change. As the news lines continue and as the story continues to not go away, then Glen are going to maybe have another think about it, because especially when there's been radio silence from the Kilmacud side, Glen are probably sitting there going, well, this is festering. Something needs to happen here.
Back page of the Irish Independent this morning. There must be a replay. Brolly, as Glen expressed their frustration. So that's Brolly. That's the piece that he did with Richie last night, and we're going to play you out with that at around about 9:30 this morning. But at 8:38, John Duggan is with us. John.
Ger Shane, how are we doing?
Good morning to you. What are your thoughts?
I think there's a couple of things I think Glen need to appeal. Whether they want to or not, they have to appeal, because the governing body in any sport should be making the rules and deciding on things when there are disputes or there's transgressions or whatever like that. So for the GA to put this on Glen is not fair. That they have to decide by tomorrow afternoon whether they want to appeal or not. Like, the rule is not... It's Rule 6.4, Section B, Part 1 says a team exceeding the number of players permitted under Rule 2.1 rules of specification, playing rules, penalties for that, which is an extra player, on a proven objection, which would be Glen, award of a game to the opposing team, or replay or fine, depending on the circumstances. Below that, it says, on an inquiry by the committee in charge, forfeiture of a game without award of a game to the opposing team or replay or fine depending on the circumstances. It doesn't say or, it's just below it. So if that's just below it, then surely the Central Competitions Control Committee could just as equally intervene here and say, we feel that this should be replayed.
Yeah.
Ger was making the point earlier, wouldn't it be nice to hear from Kilmacud and for them to come out ahead of this and say, okay.
I don't think I think Joe Brolly's right. I think it's not about Glen or Kilmacud. This is about the governing body making a decision based on the fact that there were 16 players on the pitch at the end of the day.
You're a Dublin fan. Dublin have 16 men for the last kick of the game against Mayo in 2017. It would be nice to have Dublin come out ahead of this and say there should be a replay.
I don't think it's their role to do that.
I think they have a role.
The wrongdoers. Kilmacud are the wrongdoers here by choice or not.
I think you're 100% correct. The primary responsibility rests with the GAA. But where is the leadership at Kilmacud? Where are they thinking about, like, this is how we want to win this? This is going to be... It is tarnished. Whether or not they see that right now, if this result stands, forever there'll be an asterisk beside that going, well, they had 16 men on the field of play.
Yeah, and maybe they don't care.
And if there's a replay and if Glen win that, is there an asterisk beside that as well?
Beside the replay? I don't think so.
It's a reset button. The clock starts at 0 for that replay.
There's a story. There's definitely a story about it. The way there's a story about the 98s, Jimmy Cooney.
Clare would have won that RR, by the way.
And I think they would have too.
Yeah.
I really
was bitter. As a Clare fan, I was very bitter about that. And
as Kilmacud fans will be better if there's a replay and they lose. I totally get that, but that doesn't matter. I think there has to be a replay, as Colin McKee says, for the integrity of the game going forward.
There has to be a replay. In my, I think a fine is too lenient and a overturning or forfeiting the game is too harsh. The replay is the obvious middle ground in that. But this should be. It's not about Glen being put in this awful position where they got to make this decision by tomorrow afternoon to make a call to whether object or not. And if they do object, they're saying, well. It's just sour grapes. People are accusing them of that, and then they've got to go all over again. They shouldn't be put in that guilt.
No,
there shouldn't be any kind of guilt around that. There's one other thing I want to say about this. Everybody was clamouring for the split season, and the split season happened, and the club got their days in the sun at a much more increased level of scrutiny than they would have had in the past when you've got league games going on around the same weekend as the club finals around Patrick's Day. In the last couple of weeks, the barometer from that scrutiny has not been great. With the 6 red cards in the Fossa Stewarts and Harps game, the elbow in the face, and now this absolute mess. Now, maybe we can argue that it would have happened in an inter-county match between, say, Meath and Louth and Clare and Offaly, as we said in the past. But I just think you're going to now have more increased levels of scrutiny on the club game, given it is now with a clear run.
I think that's for the best, though. I think that if you're gonna have this behaviour amplified, you have some hope of there being an element of shame around elbows to the face.
Yeah.
This poor lad, he's got a job to go to. Well, then don't elbow somebody in the face. Don't be a face elbower. And also, try not to be that person. Yeah. He's not that type of... Well, he is. He just showed us he's a face elbower.
And
don't
also,
do it.
Not taking myself off a pitch when I should.
I do, we could hear the tannoy. We could hear the tannoy on the TV. Now maybe the microphone is beside the...
Mannion looked like he had to look up to the screen to realise his number and name was up there.
I don't think Mannion is really relevant to this.
No, but then Darren Mullen would have seen his name up on the screen as well, equally so. But then their argument is, was his head just on that move, the 45? Was he not looking up at the screen or thinking about it?
I just feel the club game needs to wake up to the fact now. You're now in the much more limelight than you would have been a year ago.
Yeah, well, it's the GAA.
Yeah,
who run the club game. These are there. If this was happening at like a tiny ground where the crowd were actually on the field, you'd be like, okay, I have a vague understanding of how this happened. But all the processes and procedures and stewards and everything that work in Croke Park all the time were the ones who were responsible for this, right? And one last point on this: the CCCCC. I'm like, why don't they just intervene? The CCCCC stands and is appointed by the president of the GAA. So it's the president of the GAA and it's the Director General who between them need to come out and say, this is the situation, this is what's happened, this is what our solution to it is. If you don't like it, that's fine, but we've made a decision, as opposed to our decision is we have no decision. Because let's face it, that is the decision that they've made. We're going to let this tiny small club, in this moment of massive crisis, we're going to put all the pressure on 3 or 4 people in that club to make a decision on which the rest of history will depend. The history books will record what happens in the Waddy Glen clubhouse.
Yeah, it's seismic.
Glen clubhouse.
And there is like the GA is a very well-run organisation, like financially, like in terms of putting all the money back in. If you compare it to the FAI in the last 20 years, there's just no comparison. It does an amazing job with communities and all that kind of thing. But I was just watching Monday Night Football last night, and the Arsenal Man United, like the analysis by Neville and Carr of Arsenal Man United, and you're thinking, wow, this is unbelievable stuff. This is like the top level of sport and the professionalism, and this is the biggest global thing. And then I'm looking at this absolute circus on the other side.
The thing that annoys me most about the fact that Glen have to decide, myself and Joe were up in Mahara last summer, I think, ahead of one of Derry's big All-Ireland quarterfinals or semi-finals for a roadshow, and in that area of Wadi Graham's Glen, and this sounds like a cliche to say, they absolutely love their football, and that's probably why they're not, like, it's a real community feel. They don't want to be the guys to turn around and say, let's have a replay. They don't want to win that way, and that's probably where you're getting Malachy O'Rourke's comments after the match. He's along similar lines. He says, I don't think that's the way the club runs. They don't want to win this way. But the point is, it should be on the GEA's.
Yeah, no club, no county should be.
No, if it was the other way around, Kilmacud shouldn't have to make the decision either. Fergus Keogh points out, bring both teams to Breffni Park at the weekend and have them replay the 45, which is an option. It's just remarkable. I didn't even notice it at the end of the game, I have to say. It was only then on Twitter afterwards I was like, Jesus, yeah. And then you look at the photographs that are on the back pages of the papers today.
They're very compelling.
The front page story in the Irish Times.
It wasn't yesterday though. Yeah. That was interesting. It didn't make front page of the sports section yesterday. It's front page of the main paper today. So that's the front of the Irish Times this morning. It is. So Brolly was talking about the reputational damage. Like, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. This is like, how many All-Ireland finals do you have? 8, 10, 12, 14. Like 20 All-Ireland finals at all age groups in men's and women's in Croke Park, and like, one of them is now because of a counting error.
Yeah. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5. Like, my, how many fingers?
Well, that's the point.
Fingers? Oh no, we've gone on to a fourth hand. No.
Yeah, that's the point Damian Cassidy was making. This is a once in a lifetime. Glen may never be back in an All-Ireland final. Last year was the first time they won a Derry Senior Championship. This year was the second time, and they went straight away all the way to the All-Ireland final. They might never be back. They mightn't be back for 20, 30, 40 years in an All-Ireland final. So now is the time to strike and replay this game. Whether someone's pointing out in the comments, Crokes will bash them in the replay.
They might do.
They might. Who cares?
Then it would be a clean situation.
It would be, exactly. And Crokes would feel better about that.
They would.
Like, and in fairness, if there's anybody in the Crokes conclave talking about this, like, well, what are the outcomes here? More than likely there's going to be a replay.
Yeah.
And actually there should be. So we need to start preparing for that. And the best way to prepare for that is take all the moral high ground out of this and go, do you know what? That was an error.
Yeah, get ahead of it.
Human error happens.
We've had replays in the past with Clare Offaly, as we said, and I remember at the time that was very much, if I recall, obviously the Offaly people all went and sat on the pitch, and it was mayhem. It was there the day, and then the next week it was decided that they'd have to replay in Thurles, and Clare were done. They were just almost shot. And then you had Armagh, Laois in 2016 had to replay a football championship qualifier because there was an extra substitution used by Laois, and Laois went and won the replay. The Fila in the early 2000s, they had to replay a game in the Leinster Championship. So there are precedents around this, and it's very clear. What the rule says is very clear that if there's more players there, these are the things that can happen.
Can you imagine the bite and the narrative around a replay? I mean, already, as you say, the club game has a focus on it, a spotlight, but this replay would be juicy, to say the least.
I just think with the spotlight, it needs to be tighter.
All right. What else going on?
Well, Frank Lampard sacked. I don't know if you talked about much in the show yet, but you'd have to think they're going down because of the financial constraints they're under at Everton. You're going through, like Sky were going through it last night on Monday Night Football. You've had 692 million's gone out under Mashiri since 2016 and a net spend of 310 million. Their highest league position's been 7th. Roberto Martinez, Ronald Koeman, Sam Allardyce, Marco Silva, Carlo Ancelotti, Rafa Benitez and now Frank Lampard. They're second from bottom in the league. They've got 15 points in 20 games. For a club that hasn't been relegated since 1951, I was going through the amount of titles won. They've more titles won than Manchester City. They're 4th in the honours list behind Man U, Liverpool and Arsenal. It's amazing for such an institution. Reminds me of Leeds in the mid noughties, or Sunderland, to these clubs that they're probably too big to fail, and then they do fail.
Yeah, and like earlier on we were talking about with Dominic King, and he was comparing them to Sunderland and Villa. Like, Villa did make a recovery and did make a comeback, but it took new owners and the injection of hundreds and hundreds of millions. Leeds took 2 decades basically to come back.
16 years, yeah.
You know?
Anthony Barry, by the way, speaking of Roberto Martinez, in the Irish Examiner, being linked with the return to Stephen Kenny's backroom team, which is interesting. Obviously, his time at Belgium is finished. He's back with Chelsea now on a day-to-day basis. Harry Kane, 266 goals, world-class stuff last night. A 1-0 win for Spurs at Fulham. Southampton, Newcastle tonight. And Johnny Sexton then at the Six Nations launch kind of criticising this amateur law that's going to be brought in the English game about no tackles above the waist. And he says that's just as dangerous as... because you can get hit by the knee or by the other ways you can get hit that can be just as dangerous in the tackle. And it's about more, I think, improving the tackle generally and the tackle rules generally. It's funny because you could hear everything in Fulham last night through the tannoy, through the TV coverage, and all you could hear the Spurs fans chatting was, we want Levy out, we want Levy out, through the whole game, even though they were leading, which was interesting.
The away fans know the score.
The away fans, yeah. Well, I was in with the away fans at the Frankfurt game, and you really feel, wow, this is the real hardcore, and I mean that in a good way, supporter that does not miss a game.
You're one of the ultras that day, John.
Yeah, like even we were all escorted from a pub, O'Reilly's pub in Frankfurt, to the train station, and there was a special train for the Spurs fans to the train station where the stadium was, and you actually got to walk through a forest in Frankfurt to get to the ground. So it was Tottenham in the Woods was the song, but that was last night, and yeah, I think it's only one story though, isn't it? It's funny, like as you said, David Moran is kind of on the back burner with
poor David, Jesus.
Yeah, with this Glenn story.
What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen, as opposed to what do you want to happen?
I think there will be a replay. I think Glenn will object and there'll be a replay. But would I be surprised if they don't? No. But if they don't, then that creates another problem. Because
what happens the next time it happens?
Well, but also creates a legitimacy problem. It just shows that the GA has taken itself out of a situation where they're the governing body, and that's not a good thing. And there'd have to be some kind of rule change or some kind of thing at Congress or some presidential change where the GA needs to take control of their own rules.
Yeah.
So
actually, I think for the GA's perspective, it'd be good for them if Glenn do object.
Why don't they understand that? Why don't they see that? Why aren't they out in front of that? Although if we think this through, the multiple different scenarios that might actually happen here, if there's a lawlessness around, if we don't actually deal with this. As you say, like, counties will be asking, why aren't we throwing on the 16th man for the last minute?
It's fingers in the ears. Let's hope this blows away. Let's hope someone else makes the decision here. We don't want to have to make the decision. Nobody wants to have to make this decision.
Like, I don't know who's on the CCCCC.
There's a full committee, and it's published, and it's appointed by the president. Is the thing? It's appointed by the president. Very high profile, really well qualified. But I'm not sure that they're asked to be leaders in this scenario. Do you know what I mean?
But even if there are leaders, you can just say, I'll just blame the CCCC. You're not actually even blaming a person, you're blaming an entity. And then the entity can just hide behind the entity. And then you can just say, well, it's the GA. And that's probably a good thing for them. Well, so just get in front of it, decide, you know what, we're not happy with this.
The organisation are using it as a shield as opposed to the members of the CCCC. I don't think they've been tasked with being leaders in this. Do you know what I mean? I think that it'd be very interesting to hear from some of them exactly how much encouragement they have to intervene in scenarios like this, where it's like, it's not in the referee's report, and unless there's a complaint, we can't do anything about it. But actually, on the statute books, they can do something about it, but they're actively discouraged, or they seem to be. Maybe they're not actively discouraged. I need to be correct about this. Maybe there's no encouragement for them to intervene, which again is a sin of omission, you would argue.
You'd be fascinated to see, are there any back channels in the situation?
There must be.
Is there a call going into Glenn? What's your feeling? What's the thoughts here? What's the music here? Are you going to appeal? Okay, you're going to appeal. Well, then we'll make the decision. You'd wonder if those kind of conversations are happening.
But they should have happened, in the immediate aftermath. And all day yesterday, well, let's just wait and see if anybody says anything. And on the back page on Tuesday.
If it's still there on Wednesday. If it's still there Wednesday, we'll do something.
No, we weren't on the front pages today.
Yeah.
24 hours later. A mushroom cloud. 8:53. John Duggan, thanks very much for that. More from John, of course, on Saturday afternoon and Off the Ball on News Talk. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. OTB Gold, Keith Andrews meets Philly McMahon. Dadcast at 3, a career retrospective of Packy Bonner at 4. Cor Staunton is OTB Gold, and the show is live tonight with Galway legend Joe Canning and an update on the latest situation at Juventus, which is really interesting. We didn't talk about Paratici there, but he might be getting banned because of the fallout from that. Richie McCormick on hosting duties. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. After the break, Dublin and Donegal All-Ireland winners Michael Darragh MacAuley and Eamon McGee will be on the line as we talk about the issue of Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, who have such a strong influence on young men. First, here's Gordon Darcy on his surprising Ulster connections, chatting on last night's Monday Night Rugby.
Like Ben Healy, as someone saying, was qualified for Scotland the day he was born.
Yeah.
But hasn't represented Ireland. I think there is a slight wrinkle in that. John Cooney's played 10 times for Ireland, so that's, I know there is a loophole there for you. Once you're happy with it, I suppose it's not something I could ever see myself doing.
Were you qualified for someone else, Gordon? You're not telling us.
No. It's like, do you know what? It's like, at two different times in my career, I got offered to go to. I got offers to go to two other clubs, and one was in the UK, and one was Ulster, and France. Couldn't settle with the one in the UK, but the Ulster one, it just it was brought up right through the Leinster system.
Yeah.
It's just like, I genuinely couldn't put that jersey on. So, I think there's a thing you have to, like when you take money out of sport sometimes in professional rugby, and there is something special about representing your country. And I think for me, and then again, it's not, do whatever you want. I don't really care. I back you to do it. You have picked a country, and now it's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to avail of a loophole. It's like, listen, I understand what is there. I just, again, saying I can't ever see myself being able to kind of go give the same dedication. If you did do it, how would you? You can't say you love Scotland as much as you loved playing for Ireland. It's not something you grow up with.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the Ball Daily.
A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, a slight tangent, the crappy quiz, and you had to be there.
You have to be there, but I wish I wasn't there.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, it's 8:56. I'm delighted to say Michael Darragh MacAuley and Eamon McGee are with us. Inspired a bit by Eamon McGee's tweet. It worries me immensely that there is young lads out there who swear by Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson. There's the tweet on screen for you. Eamon, what worries you about this?
Well, first of all, I have to say that there's a big difference between Peterson and Tate. Now, I think some people were saying that I was putting them in similar brackets. Tate's way further down the road than what Peterson. Peterson was the kind of the start of this. And it is, in my opinion, when you just keep the thing going now. But in terms of what worries me, the Tate thing is obvious because the stuff he said in terms of how he kind of glamorizes, misogyny, and he talks about raping women. With the Peterson now, I just think that I kind of come into Peterson through a friend, and I've listened to a few debates and all this, and he's seems to be a bit of a spoofer. And if young fellas are putting him in this bracket as a kind of a sage and someone that they can go to and someone that they take life advice from, then that worries me. And obviously the Tate thing worries me because he's just such a plonker and he just has really, really toxic views here.
Yeah, if you look through any of the young Irish actors or musicians or footballers or GA players, if you look through their following on Twitter, Tate's name pops up on a lot of them. Michael Darragh, you were happy enough to talk about this to us, as you were saying. Of all the nice things you've asked me to talk about over the years, I've turned you down. But this one, you did want to talk to us about this.
Yeah, for God knows why. But yeah, look, I think Eamon has points there. I think it's it's kind of missed my generation a little bit. Like I think lads in their 30s are probably more at home with themselves. They're more found whatever their version of masculinity is. And Andrew Tate hasn't been a big factor in our lives, and it's only recently that we've started talking about him. But it is worrying when you start talking to the younger people, and when you start talking to people in their teens who are still finding themselves. And Andrew Tate is big noise, like he is big noise, and people are believing what they're saying. So I think, look, if anyone who's kind of spouting views like that, like it has to be kind of clocked and watched, and I think I'd be very like, you have to be very careful how you speak about it as well, because I know like at that age, if you tell me not to listen to someone, I'm going to listen to them even more. I'm going to buy their T-shirt as well. I would have been that kid, like. So I think it just needs to be explained and talked through why people are listening to this dude, and just to so people have an understanding of where these views are coming from and what nonsense it is. Yeah,
this isn't death metal or Rage Against the Machine or something that you're being told not to listen to, where like in at that stage most of the message coming from that was anti-establishment. This is actually a bit more dangerous, it feels like.
Yeah, and I
establishment. I think that's what gets them towards the likes of Tit, and the way he talks about the matrix and the system. There's definitely that feel for it, because I went down the YouTube rabbit hole over the weekend, and my YouTube recommendations are Andrew Tate and bedtime stories for kids now. Like, so. And I get the allure if you're a young fella, and this guy saying fight the system. There's definitely that part of it, that whole anti-establishment thing of it.
It's even in Michael Darragh, Danielle McKenna was on News Talk Breakfast recently enough. She's a youth project manager up in Rialto, and she was talking about the fact that they're even very careful with young lads about the language. They don't even use the word toxic masculinity, because, as she said, masculinity is something to be embraced, and it's a beautiful thing. But on this end of the spectrum, when young lads are being taught about sexism and how to treat women by people like Andrew Tate, this is dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and I think you have to be careful with that toxic masculinity word as well, because it does kind of drive people away and go, "Oh, that old fucking and then lads will come the other way." And that anti-establishment thing is fine, and we're all about it. And I was kind of wondering, I was actually comparing it to like the likes of Eminem when I was thinking of coming in here, and he was like lads that listened to him on his way age, and he has a song about killing his wife at the time, and then like, and our generation before us were going, "Geez, those lads are walking around thinking, listening to that, are they going around like with similar views?" But I think that there is just a bit of a kind of a snakier level to this, and just how it's done. Like, I think it's been very like well acknowledged how much he's kind of gamified the system in terms of like just short YouTube clips, and this getting people like 60% of his followers to like what he's saying, and the other 40% to hate it. It's that Donald Trump effect, kind of where it just gets people talking in those short snappy clips. Yeah,
in a weird way, right? So Greta Thunberg obviously got a lot of credit for her owning of him, and ultimately the claim that the Romanian authorities saw the pizza box, and if anybody hasn't followed that story, but what it also did was it meant that everybody who follows Greta Thunberg now knows who he is, and suddenly, like, the amplification, it's a really brilliant / horrific use of the algorithms on TikTok and on social media, where you have a fight with somebody who is not part of your core audience, and then all of a sudden people come and they dunk on you. But what that does is it gets your base out going, screw you, and then all of a sudden there's these rows happening that you don't even need to be part of anymore, but your name is getting out there in lights, and it is the gamification of the system. A lot of people don't know who we're talking about, who are watching this morning, and so we do have 2 clips that we want to play, but there are significant trigger warnings ahead of these, like pretty gross. So just be careful if you've young ears, or indeed if you might be triggered by murder or abuse. Then I just want to play you these 2 clips. We'll play them back to back, okay? So the first one is an audiogram where he's talking about how he would react if a woman attacked him with a machete.
Have you ever seen a woman try and do anything competently? Like, imagine a girl pick this up. If I pick this up, you ain't f***ing with me. I'd have my left hand, I'd still like jab, I'd swing low, take your knee out. You ain't gonna see it coming. What would a woman do? Slap the machete, slap her in the face. One hand, machete, and then backhand. I perfected this in pimp school. When I got my PhD, we had to practice. If a girl comes at you, you cheater, you cheating. It's bang out the machete, boom in her face, and then grip her up by the neck. Like, shut up, bitch! There's a large contingent of men out there who don't want to wear makeup, who don't want to be girls, who don't want to be told they're toxic because they want to go to the gym, who want to drive nice cars, who want to have money, who want to have hot chicks. And there's nothing wrong with us. We are not evil. We are not bad. We're not misogynistic. We're not out to hurt anybody. Let me tell you one more thing. When bad things happen, they call men like us. The feminists who hate us and call us toxic, the second they have trouble, they'll call a police officer. Do you think they want a feminist male to turn up or a man like me and you? They need us and they use us. But the second we have an opinion, the second I decide to voice and talk about the things that we talk about, explain our points of view, they want to cancel us. They don't want us to speak. They just want us to defend them, build the railroads, build the roads, be the workhorses, be the slaves, and they think we're not allowed a point of view. Well, they made a fucking mistake.
He's currently in prison in Romania facing charges of people trafficking and organised crime. So we'll see how that all ends up for him. But
yeah, look, that's like, it's absolutely deplorable. It's also like embarrassing. Like it's like who was watching that and going, geez, I want to be that. Like, but it's that, see that narrative of you're under attack. Like, it's that whole, your masculinity is under attack. These feminists are coming out to get you. Like, it's like that's what's driving people going, geez, I need to do something about this. Like that's what's driving. And even his whole thing, like his house is called the War Room, and it's like, it's all his under siege mentality, and that's what's driving people. And people are like, geez, I need to protect my masculinity. Whereas it's like equality that feminism are looking for. Like, so. Yeah,
that's an interesting point, Eamon, that Michael Darragh says, siege mentality. And like, it often strikes me as, the conversation often comes up about skinny women in magazines, airbrushed to the hilt, and how that's a bad influence on young girls, and how that's not realistic and not real life. This is similar for young lads. This is being portrayed to them as what they need to be.
100%. And let's start off. It's incredibly hard to be a young male now, and from you leave your teens to the late 20s, it's hard work. There's a lot of, we're going through this movement where we had our roles, 60s, 70s, it was clearly defined, and now we're moving towards, and which I believe we're moving towards a better society here. And there's a lot of, and I don't want to say the blame, but there's a lot of kind of guilt there in terms of and I don't want to use this word patriarchy either, because it's one of them words that people just roll the eyes at now, but there's a lot of guilt about that whole patriarchy, and of course there should be, but maybe the message that's getting across to these young boys that you've got to atone for all these sins, and that seeps up. And the Tate thing is easier to get on board with, because you can just go back to the old ways. You don't have to change too much. It's an easier fit to get into, rather than embracing this change that we're inevitably going to go towards anyway. We're going towards that betterment. And Peterson put in it when he started coming out, we don't need to change, we don't need to apologise. And now Tate's taken to the next level, and he's just going, like, as he's saying from them clips, in terms of what he's all about. And I think young kids, it's hard for them to go that extra way, and it's just easier to get on board with what the likes of these boys are saying.
It's mad. And Ger, we discussed this before the show, and you were making the point about how this isn't just kids. That Jordan Peterson, did he sell out the 3 Arena? I think he did, and that wasn't all teenage boys attending that either. And I'd like to think a lot of people in their friend group, if someone started spouting Andrew Tate's views over a dinner table or a few pints with your mates, that people would step in and say, well, that's not okay. But that's the point. It's not just young kids looking at their phones and being plagued and diseased by social media. It's adults too. Yeah. And I know in the YouTube comments, before I even opened them this morning, we're going to be called woke, leftist, everything under the sun. It's the usual crap.
I can't wait.
And they're grown men.
Yeah, no.
And what also happens, Shane, is that people would say, "Why are you giving this airtime? Why are you giving what Tate wants?" But yeah, that's gone. It's in the school grounds. It's on the phones. The whole Tate thing, young fellas are in it. So this is why we need to have these conversations, and this is why we need to, because a lot of parents don't have a clue who Andrew Tate is. There's a lot of older generation that don't know about it. So people need to have these conversations, because if we just bury the head in the sand, it's no good either.
Like, I actually think it's interesting to watch. Like, if you see someone with these amazing cars and this lifestyle, like, and I think the vast majority of people who are flicking through his stuff are it's just eye candy. They're like, yeah, we'll watch that. But I think it's the ones that are actually really start believing in his values. Like, they're the ones that are actually feeling they're the ones that were disconnected from society. They're the ones that feel that there isn't a place for them, and he's given them that place. They're the ones that you need to look out for, and that you need to try and push towards having a conversation with someone. Like, that's like the next level, and they are only the smaller percentage of it. Like, everyone that follows Andrew Tate isn't a bad person. Like,
what do we do? What is that conversation?
Yeah, like, it's tough, and the media has a big role in this, and I think people have been going back and forth, and we had this with Trump as well, going, like, when he came around, we're like, oh sure, it's only this fella, he'll blow off now, this old idiot, like, and then he became the leader of the free world, like, so, like, you need to be careful with how we address these conversations. So, look, yeah, like, I think the conversations need to be had, but without that kind of backlash of, like, this is the wrong thing to do, because people will just eat it up, like, and just I suppose try and have open conversations, try and have people on both sides of the fence talking about it,
to try and understand exactly what it is that the kids feel that he's appealing to. Because otherwise, like we were talking about it beforehand, and Cameron, who kind of put this whole thing together, was making the point that a lot of people don't realise how difficult it was to get whatever form of equality we have today. I don't think we're finished. I don't think that we are a fully equal society, and you see it in the gender pay gap, and you see it in loads of different ways. If you're 16, 17, you don't know that people of colour had it so bad for so long. And we all have kind of witnessed that process that changed from the 70s, 80s, 90s. That was hard won. The marriage referendum, so hard won. Like, we feel like there's kind of this is just the reality, but actually you have to go through that process. That was an iterative process. Loads of societies aren't the same. Eastern Europe, still very homophobic, there it's not natural that you would march in pride if you're a company. There, the workforce are rebelling against that type of thing. And they're all part of the same European Union. So I guess the point is that, like, what we take for granted, we shouldn't take for granted, and we should be actually willing to explain to people, no, equality is very important. Men and women are equal, and not just assume that they know it for some reason.
Yeah, and look, is it a case of, like, that we need to, like, highlight values as opposed to, like, the people who don't have the values, like, in terms of, like obviously Conor McGregor is shopping at the same sweet shop as this fella, like, it's the same thing being spouted, and there's probably that whole like, people are, like, when I go onto my timelines and stuff, it's probably that's been sold at me more than, like, LeBron James who's building schools for kids, and that's maybe less interesting to highlight as opposed to McGregor doing whatever McGregor does next, the usual nonsense, like.
You said, Ger, there, what do we do? And the reality is, we're probably talking this morning mostly to parents of young lads as opposed to young lads. Now, some young lads will see this as well, but and look, you do have to cut it at the source, and people like Tate and Peterson aren't going to go away necessarily. But the conversation came up with Daniel McKenna, who I mentioned, the youth worker in Rialto, when she talked about phones and how she was being asked, when should you be okay with your young lad or young girl having a mobile phone? And she was like, well, as soon as you're okay with them seeing porn and seeing people like Andrew Tate pop up, that's when you buy the phone for your kid. Because the reality is, as soon as you get the phone, they're going to see this crap. Like, is there what can parents do? Like, your work, even Michael Darragh, working with young people, is there an onus on parents? Like, even parents watching this morning, they're probably sitting there going, what can I? How do I interfere here?
I'll actually kick that back to Eamon. He's full of babies over there.
Well, that's true. You've young lads in the house, Eamon. So, like, how do you go about ensuring that the young lads don't either see this or become familiar with it and grow to I guess, agree with it?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. Until you're ready, until that young fella is ready, to see the things, the likes of porn and the likes of these poisonous viewpoints, then it could be 16, it could be 17, it could be 18. That's when you hand them the phone. And I know parents. I was one of these parents that there was never going to be screen time here. There was never going to be YouTube, and unfortunately, I told them YouTube, like, give me 10 minutes piece here, give me a headpiece for 10 minutes, bit of YouTube, throw it on, and you can excel a wee bit of your principles on that there now, but some of them you have to remain steadfast in terms of what gateway do you open for this young mind, and when is the right time to open it? There's no set time, but you have to make that judgment call as a parent. And just what can we do for young fellas? I think schools, in terms of the way we disseminate information, because a lot of what Tate talks about, and even Peterson, like Peterson does say some good stuff, but there's a lot of stuff he's just way off the mark with. And how young people, we should teach them about this. There's very little to it. Like Tate's on about, go to the gym, choose not to be depressed. And if a young person's watching that, and if he has the right tools to be able to just analyse this, well, what's he actually saying here, and call it out as the BS that it is, then that's possibly something. Parents obviously can help with that too. Because there's so much of this information, it's something that we're going to have to talk about for this generation in terms of what's actually right and what isn't, what the media narrative.
Because it's really, I mean, it's peer-to-peer, this the dissemination of the information, and it's obviously far more powerful than you saying to somebody, oh, you shouldn't do this, when one of his mates said, well, of course we're going to do this because we've just been told not to. But like, so it's misogynistic, but pretty quickly it becomes racist, and all of a sudden, this becomes a fire that we can't put out. So we just need to be. That's why it is important to have these conversations. And the toolkit for teaching people to deal with it, like, you can't deal with this stuff at 13. You make mistakes at 13. You learn by making your mistakes. I'm scared.
Yeah. Look, I'm not. I don't have some miracle answer now. In fairness, like, and it's not easy. I just like to try and keep the conversation open, but not just kind of, as I said, just not kind of kick it down the road and pretend that it's not gonna affect us. Like, I think it's in the conversation need to happen about it.
Is there a role for sport and sports teams? Do you need to be aware of it, or is that like is that supposed to be a safe space where it's not the job of like the soccer team or the basketball team or whatever to like say, don't be pricks, lads?
Yeah, no, I think sport completely has a role, like, and it's a better space to deal with it usually, and look, and that whole like, dressing rooms aren't perfect places at all. They're not woke environments in general, and I suppose, like, and they've definitely changed in my last 15 years in dressing rooms. From what you could say or what people said 15 years ago has definitely changed, but it's not gotten to the nirvana yet. There's still nonsense going on. So, but I think it is a better place, and it probably comes from coaches to be able to like set that narrative conversation. But it's very tough. Like, I wasn't stepping outside of my box at 18. I wasn't telling someone like, you're not allowed to say that. Like, like at 18, I was still trying to find myself. I didn't know where I was. Then when I came back in my 30s, then I'm like, yeah, like, I was like, don't ever say that. Like, yeah. So it's not easy.
It really isn't.
For me, sport, there's got to be leaders in the local. I think in an elite environment we shouldn't take, and we won't get any leadership from any elite sports, be it boxing, be it cycling, soccer or whatever. I think at a local level, that's where we need to see our leaders and to see our, the coaches down the local club stepping in, and maybe if they see a conversation that strikes up, come down it, and not come down that hard, but just educate and say, do you honestly believe that now? Because it's hard being that young kid nowadays, and I think if we come down hard on this, and we totally put it in the forbidden section, that it's just going to make it more appealing to the young people.
I was at a play recently. Timmy Creed did a play called Spliced, a one-man play about hurling, but it's all about that kind of dressing room culture, and it's really interesting. And we had a conversation afterwards, and like, I think that's what we were talking about that as well, in terms of like, there's probably 2 or 3 leaders in every single dressing room that actually completely set the tone of what happens in that dressing room, like, and that'll happen at all ages, like, and they will, like, in whatever way they want to pull and steer the dressing room, will trickle down to everything else that happens. So it's important. As I said, it's not easy for you to be the person that steps up, but if you're listening to that and you are in that dressing room, like, to have those conversations with those 2 or 3 people can make it a different place for the better. Yeah.
I think the other thing is to try and create an alternative version of reality that is actually a positive sense of what it means to be a man, or to define yourself as a man, to be masculine. Like, and so to take it away from the conversation where the only way is for it to be associated with negativity, and that's difficult because that's like chiseling off generations of conversation. But like, I know Gizzy tries to talk about this a good bit, about like positive masculinity and celebrating who you are as a man without it actually damaging or without it being negative or aggressive.
And running around the nip. Yeah. No better man than Gizzy to push that. But yeah, like that's what I was saying, like to highlight those values of like respect, integrity, and as I said, like LeBron James might be someone who did that. Like, and unfortunately I was going in rabbit holes as well of Andrew Tate, and it's a dangerous place. And then it just popped up, like it was like a minute of Usain Bolt being sound to strangers, some like random clip, and it was so refreshing. It was like, that's what you can do. You can actually just be sound to strangers instead of being this like ridiculous human being. So yeah,
that's the point. That's why you came in, because you wanted to talk about this, keep this conversation going. And I think like yourself and Eamon are both role models. You know, GA players realistically are role models in Irish society. It's going to take a lot more people like yourselves who are role models to come out against what Andrew Tate and the likes of Jordan Peterson are saying.
I know what Eamon's going to say there, just in terms of like all the club levels, like all the local lads in clubs are the role models in their clubs and in their towns as well, and that's where the conversation needs to trickle. All right, any final thoughts, Eamon?
No, this is just good to have the conversation, like, and just make people aware of it, and so it's the heavy-handed approach. It's tough being that young person, and you know, we've got to acknowledge what we did, what the patriarchy did, and you know, try and become better without taking a step backwards now, if that makes sense.
Maybe just all run around the fields in Kerry with Gizzy in the nip, and it'll all be sorted.
It's on the agenda. All right, Michael Darragh MacAuley Eamon McGee, thanks lads. It's 20 minutes past 9 this morning. We're back in a moment with Deal or No Deal.
Watching play, it was one of those, not rugby wise, you could see he was just so upset and out of sorts, had been dropped from the Irish squad. It's one of those ones you just want to go and put your arm around him and say, listen mate, just take a breath, it's going to be okay, you know, just try and calm. He was trying so hard. Every kick off the boot, off the tee, it was like he had no timing in the world. They were just like dead ducks flying across the air, and he was just sort of and that was typical of what Munster. They tried their guts out, as they always do. They really, you know, they were so brave and worked their guts out, but they were just so inaccurate. They had no right to hang in there, and they did, but. They got to get that accuracy right. They've got to get those passes right. They had the set plays they've got to get right, and they're just not doing that right now. And that's the difference. Effort's not the problem, and effort's never been the problem with the Munster team. They always try their guts out. That's who they are. But they were not accurate in the same way as Leinster. And I would say Toulouse were. I was very disappointed with Toulouse. Their attack in the 22 was absolutely dinosaur. I'm just going to run into you attack. They didn't look to go out the back. They didn't have the creativity that you usually associate with a Toulouse side. I thought they were very mediocre in certain aspects to it. Now, it was a really bitterly cold day. I don't know, that didn't come across on the TV. But here in France, where I'm talking to you from, it was a day where you worry about players breaking bones. It was that cold and that horrible. But
hi, Royce, Matty Taylor. I can see him getting his car. I've decided to go to Bolt. I'm waving him going out the car.
Just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation.
They just don't seem to be able to get deals over the line.
All right, Phil Egan is here with us. Phil, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you doing?
A welcome relief for you to talk about transfer dealings.
Yeah,
from all the rest of the stuff that's going on in the world.
1 week to go.
Well, Frank Lampard's gone, right?
Yep.
So somebody at Everton's going to start buying players.
I think, do they have the budget to do that?
Well, they might sell Anthony Gordon.
Yeah, I wonder, is that ship sailed?
Because his form is dipped?
Well, I don't think it's not. It's very hard to stand out in a team that have been in such bad form.
Yeah.
But the best bits of Everton, there's been very few this season, have been when Anthony Gordon's been involved.
Is there a window of opportunity for somebody in the style of Trossard being much cheaper than you thought he might be compared to some other players who are of a similar standard, where you get Gordon for 20 something as opposed to the 60-80 million that it was a couple of months ago?
I think the difference though with Trossard and Gordon is the
nationality,
age, the nationality. Okay. and contracts and all that as well. But no, if Everton are going to get out of it, I think they need Anthony Gordon.
Right.
I genuinely believe, look, Everton have a lot of problems, but I think that their squad is good enough to get out of trouble, but they have to choose right. And a lot of the talk obviously is about Bielsa, and like I've already heard people saying, well, that Everton squad isn't a Bielsa squad, but look at the very first Leeds team that he picked, and there's players in it where you recognise the players in it, like the likes of Luke Ayling or Alioski or Calvin Phillips, and he made them Premier League players.
Pardon my ignorance here, I can't remember, but did Bielsa get the full off season with those players, or was it mid-season when he arrived?
His first game was a 3-1 win at Stoke, so it was during the season.
Right.
So
he can't have an immediate impact.
Well, I think whoever comes in, there's obviously going to be a new manager bounce, is what Everton are hoping for now. Their first two fixtures, well, their first fixture is Arsenal at home, which isn't a great one Saturday week. Then a Merseyside derby, which actually isn't as bad as it's a trip to Anfield. It's a trip to Anfield the following week. It's a Monday night game, but Liverpool are hardly in great form, where Everton frustrated them there last season. They obviously drew 0-0 with them this season. Everton would be up for that game, but Bielsa, if he got it, could you know the detail he goes into when he researches what kind of squad he's working with, and I think the talk is that he just wants reassurances of what he can do. He doesn't want to be losing players like Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon is someone I would classify as a Bielsa player, full of energy and with space, can just eat up the ground and is a threat on the counter-attack.
Okay, so Bielsa, good call if they make it fast.
If he wants it.
Yeah, if he wants it. But also, see, if they went down the Sean Dyche route, which is, I mean, polar opposites here, but that could be a safe option as well. Somebody that knows what it's like to be in.
I'd love to see Sean Dyche with a bit of money, right?
Yeah,
his signings weren't great, but some of them some of them were really good, and some of them were terrible.
Yeah,
you just look at the Irish players that he signed. Some of them worked out really well, and some of them didn't.
Yeah, well, the gas thing is, if he did get the Everton job, he's got a few former Burnley players. I joked when they signed the likes of Dwight McNeil and James Tarkowski, were Everton signing Burnley players just for when Dyche comes in.
Get ahead of himself.
Well, that was last July I tweeted that, and he's definitely in the mix. Wayne Rooney obviously is another one but I don't know if Wayne Rooney needs this.
He doesn't. It makes no sense if you're Wayne Rooney. This job will come for you at some point, so long as you don't absolutely screw up in America. But even if you do, no one cares. Really,
there's such pressure on whoever gets this job, just given the stadium, the finance.
Well, Ger, you were asking earlier, is it an attractive job? I'm looking at the next manager odds here. So Bielsa's now the slight favourite, 5-4 ahead of Dyche at 7-4. Then you have Marcelino Garcia Toral, who's done good things with Villarreal and Valencia in the last few years, joint third favourite with Big Dunk. But it strikes me as the type of job now who they could go for Bielsa and Dyche, and because nobody really wants the job at the moment, they could end up with a Marcelino or someone to that effect who's maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th down the list.
Yeah,
it's just not a sexy
I'd be
job.
very surprised if they didn't get Bielsa and they went for Dyche. I'd be very surprised if Dyche didn't want it.
Yeah, right. I think Dyche could.
Everton are a massive club, and I know you've been talking about earlier that you fall into the trap of thinking because you're such a big club that your aims should be higher, but for now they just have to make sure that they stay in the division, and they did it last season, and you thought, right, they can build on it, and things had started okay this season. They were quite hard to beat, but there's only so long you can do that where you become a team that's hard to beat. You have to start picking up points and winning games, and they just weren't winning games, and they didn't look like winning games.
If you're Anthony Gordon's agent, what are you doing? Are you staying till the end of the season and then seeing what the story is and having your pick of clubs in the summer?
Possibly, yeah. And it's tough for a local lad as well to just walk out on a club that he absolutely adores. And we've seen it before where they go, but where players go, but it's not that easy just to get up and leave. And I think that would be maybe a sensible thing, is just see how it goes. And if you're still in
is his form as good now as it was? Like, is he as in demand? You're saying it's hard to stand out in a bad team, but is he still the same player, or has he come off the boil to the point where
But I think Everton have come off the boil so much that Anthony Gordon's form isn't as good as it was.
Okay, would you be worried signing him now for the same price that you were being quoted in the summer?
Well, I think the price was way too high anyway.
Right.
For a guy that was still relatively unproven. You can see there's certain things that he does where you think, I can see the potential in this player. And in terms of his physique, he still has to fill out a bit. But he's an exciting player. And if Everton had got 60, 70 million for him, I could see why they would have taken it. But Everton need players like Anthony Gordon if they're going to stay up.
Okay. Manchester City have signed another young Argentine player for relatively cheap. Maximo Perrone from Vélez Sarsfield. There's another aspect of the business that Man City are doing where they're buying the Alvarez's of the world, and they just seem to be a very well run club at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose the difference with Alvarez was we kind of knew when he was signed that he was good to go. Perrone wouldn't be. He's one for the future. He's just gone 20. Left-footed player in midfield. Like they have Bernardo Silva in there in that kind of central role. Well, obviously Bernardo Silva can play in a lot of roles, but Perrone is more specialist in that central area, but a little bit more advanced. He wouldn't be playing in a Rodri role.
Of the top teams, maybe we can do a special one on Chelsea before the end of the window. It seems to me that Arsenal have done the best business. They've just gone about stuff. They've picked up Trossard, who's going to be able to have an impact on that team for a very good price, really. And they've signed the centre-back from Italy, the Polish centre-back, Jakub Kiwior.
Yeah. And he's a left-footed centre-back as well. I think that's important, where as good as Arsenal have been, I think if you're Arteta, you still have to be looking where can they improve. And I think that is an area. I think Saliba's been excellent. Gabriel has done a really good job, but I think he can upgrade on Gabriel. And it's very important, even though things are going well, you don't rest on your laurels. And that's the most successful clubs and the most successful teams. They build when they're in the strongest position. And I think actually Liverpool have been guilty of not doing that, where when they were on top a couple of seasons ago, they didn't build, and now they're paying the price for it.
Well, Mudryk's going to be probably a very good signing for Chelsea, but financially speaking, even Thomas Frank the other day speaking about how overpriced he was. He was like, look, he's a great player, unproven yet to some degree, but far too big a price. Yeah. It could emerge if Trossard is really, really good with Arsenal. Arsenal dodged a bullet there financially.
Yeah, but like a lot is made of the finances or the price tag of players, but if they make your team better, the price tag usually goes away quick enough. It's really it's something that if things don't go well at the start, then the price tag is mentioned.
Yeah. And
Anthony, Darwin Núñez, your prime examples there of.
Well, the clubs make so much money they can afford a couple of these missteps. It's actually when you pay too much in wages, and that resets the bar, and then bad players are on big wages like Manchester United have had for such a long period of time, that really sets you back in your ability. It's interesting now in the De Gea contract negotiations, he's willing to take a pay cut. And all of a sudden, if you're not paying the most for any goalkeeper in the world, then it doesn't look like a bad deal.
Yeah. And if you pay too much in wages, then you can't get them off your wage bill because they don't want to go.
And they're stuck like a
why,
bad smell.
Why would I leave?
Yeah. On that, Chelsea, one of the papers is reporting today that Chelsea's decision to make all these long contracts, the 7-year deals, which is going to allow them to write off the cost of the transfer fee and squeak in under the financial fair play, that UEFA are going to change the rules so you can only write transfers off over 5 years, so that they do this in American football where you'll sign a contract worth 100 million, but there'll be a void year at the end, so you spread out that 100 million over 5 years instead of 4, and it doesn't affect your salary cap. And I did think that there's going to be a lot of this coming in where contracts are given to players and they're like 15, 20-year contracts. You get the money over the period of time, the same amount of money, but like you've long retired and you're still picking up the salary.
Nice so retirement fund for you.
There's ways and means to get around this, but that's how Chelsea have so far been managing to do all this spending while at the same time trying to get in under financial fair play. There's going to be a fire sale of Chelsea players though. There's going to be a load of those available.
That's what I was going to say, is just try and sell a few players as well and make some money back, because they've got such a bloated squad now, and there is definitely a few players in there that will interest several clubs around Europe and in the Premier League as well.
Any sign of Liverpool signing any midfielders?
No, like
You sound downhearted there.
No, I just think that I find it really strange that in the last 4.5 years, Thiago is the only permanent signing they've made, and it goes back to what I just said about not building on the success that they had. And I get why Liverpool fans get frustrated with FSG and their model, but I don't think you can blame them for Klopp not signing a permanent midfielder, another permanent midfielder in 4.5 years. I think he has looked at that midfield and thought, I've got it all sewn up here. We've got Fabinho, who's one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. He's had an absolute shocker of a season.
It's mad that all three of them fell off a cliff at the same time.
Well, I think Thiago is the only one now that you could call good enough to get into their rival teams.
Is he still at the same form as he was over the...
I think if... The thing is...
It's hard to tell.
If you had a more functional midfield, then Thiago would look even better.
Okay.
But he's going around... He's the one putting in tackles. He wasn't signed to do that. Now, he's always had that ability to press, and people think that because he's so good on the ball that he doesn't like the other side of the game. Couldn't be further from the truth. When he arrived at Liverpool, actually there was... Especially when there was the behind closed door games, you could hear Jordan Henderson shouting at him, like, just stop going in for all these tackles, just relax. But they need, the thing is, they sign a few players in midfield and then they look good again. I think I can understand why Liverpool fans would be very frustrated with how the season's going, but like last season, they bounced back from the previous season where it didn't go according to plan. And the Bundesliga came back at the weekend, and there's Jude Bellingham, scores on the return, sets up the winner for Gio Reyna, and like, you think what a player like that would, the difference he would make. Whether we know obviously if it comes down to money, Jude Bellingham's not going to Liverpool. But if it comes down to him wanting to play for Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool, then the money thing isn't an issue.
Yeah, we'll see. No Champions League football probably next year to distract them. Maybe not even any Europa League football next year, the way things are going.
The way things are going, not even Conference League.
Yeah. Right, that is this version with a week to go in the transfer window of Deal or No Deal.
Hi, right, Matty Taylor. I can see him getting his car. I've decided to go to Bolton. I'm waving him going out the car park.
Just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation.
They just don't seem to be able to get deals over the line.
Right, thanks Phil. We're back tomorrow morning with Irish journalist Catherine Murphy live from Melbourne at the Australian Open. We'll have more on the Glenn Kilmacud story, which isn't going anywhere. Is there anything you want to get off your chest about that? Are you keeping the head down, stum?
As a dog.
Winner, chicken dinner?
Obviously, Crokes have been my club, and I can remember working in the bar years ago in the club, and I just thought on Sunday, I thought, my God, I'm glad I'm not working behind the bar. it would have gone from the elation of the win, and then a lot more chat about it, and yeah.
I wonder if the elation did stop on the first night. I'd say they were like, this is gonna go away. Party on.
I think you get to a certain point of the night where certain things just go away anyway.
Yeah.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to leave you with Joe Brolly from last night's show, talking about you know what. Enjoy.
Welcome back. Kilmacud Crokes yesterday, of course, crowned All-Ireland Club Football champions following their 111-19 victory over Glen of County Derry at Croke Park. The aftermath of that game has been dominated by the talk of 16 or perhaps even 17, depending on how you're counting them, Kilmacud players on the pitch defending that final attack from Glen, which came via a 45. One man who's been fairly vociferous in his views towards how things should proceed from that point on is Derry's own Joe Brolly. Joe, welcome back to the show.
How you doing?
Not too bad, thank you very much. You've been very vocal today in how you think things should proceed from an administrative point of view, from the point of view of this last play of the game. How do you see things going forward from here?
Well, I think the GA's reputation is at stake. This isn't a private matter between Waddy Grahams and Kilmacud. This is about the integrity of the game itself. And Part 1, which is where Rule 644 is about the fundamental ground rules of the GAA, and one of those is that 15 players play against 15. And Rule 644 really only gives 3 options. Well, it only gives 3 options. Once it's proved that there's been a breach, then the GAA can either fine, order forfeiture, or a replay. And the rule specifically says that the decision that they make depends on the circumstances. So depending on the circumstances. So I think Paul Mannion was the 17th man, but that was a technical breach. So that would be a fine. I think it's implicit in the rules.
He's close to the sideline essentially. And
that's neither here. That's not affecting the game. I mean, it would not be within the spirit of the game to order a replay because Paul Mannion had infringed over the sideline. That's like a water boy infringing.
Yeah.
Then you've got a situation like this one, which is where a player who's substituted, instead of going off, goes to the goal line, takes up a defensive position in the centre of the goal line to defend the last critical play. Don't forget that Glenn had almost scored a goal from the previous play whenever Conor Glass pulled on it in the ground and the keeper made a save. And on that last play, in fact, Duggan, the Maharav fullback, he tried to flick the ball on, missed it by a whisker. Now, if he had flicked it on, it would have gone goalwards and you would have been in the extraordinary situation where it may well have been Darragh Mullen who saved it. I mean, you can see him coming out with the ball, doing a 1-2, kicking it in the air. The referee blows the whistle. And so it's quite clearly a flagrant breach of the rule. This is a player who's continuing to take part in the game after he has been substituted. It's nothing to do with the referee or the linesman. This is the responsibility in the rule is placed on the team itself. So it's not a technical breach. It's a flagrant breach. You have an extra man defending the last play. And it seems to me that the only honourable option is for the GAA to order a replay, and it's most disappointing. To me, I think it's a total act of cowardice, of abdication of their responsibility to now say today they are not, because they have the power under Rule 644. Two ways that it operates is either on an objection from the club, and in this case it will be proven because it's accepted that the breach occurred. I mean, we could all see that. But the committee in charge can investigate it themselves, and they've said today, oh no, they're not going to do that. Which I am in disbelief about that.
Yeah, there was a
piece. The IRFU or FIFA, the replay would already be ordered. I dare say, and the general feeling in the north is if this had been the other way around, a replay would be ordered. But that's what's there's going to be all sorts of speculation out there caused by the GAA abdicating its responsibility, and people in the north are saying, look, this would never have happened if it was the other way around. Whether that's right or wrong, it's serious reputational damage to the GAA. Now Glen are in the terrible position of sort of having to make the objection. Then they would step out of the picture because the GAA then have only got three options because the objection is obviously proven. They had an extra player on the field at a critical point in the game. And I think then what would inevitably happen was that a replay would be ordered, but the GAA would amazingly have essentially washed their hands of it.
The piece, obviously, Colm Keys had this afternoon saying the GAA has put the ball back in Glen's court over the outcome of Sunday's football final, saying that Glen would have to make the approach to the GAA over this. To those who would say that essentially Darragh Mullen doesn't interfere with play, so therefore there isn't too much of a difference in the outcome of the game, what do you say to those people?
Well, but that's not the point of the rule. I mean, the point of the rule is to ensure that there's no breach of that cardinal principle that 15 play 15. He could easily have been the man who saved that last play if, in fact, Duggan had connected with his hand. But that's not the rule. He's clearly participating in the game as though he were still playing in the game, even though he's been substituted. It's therefore a flagrant breach. I mean, it's obvious that he's participating in the game. I mean, let's say, for example, that he had broken forward after he'd been substituted. He'd attacked forward and he'd been part of a two-man move. Didn't touch the ball, but Kilmacud had clinched it with a winning score. You could still say, well, look, he didn't actually touch the ball. That's not the point of this. These are one of the fundamental ground rules of the GAA.
In terms of the Glenn approach to this, Malachy O'Rourke in the immediate aftermath of the game said that, you know, he wouldn't necessarily be in favour of challenging that type of thing.
Malachy's not a Glenn man.
Malachy's
an outside manager who could easily end up managing Kilmacud Crokes in a few years. It's not a matter. It's not a matter for Malachy or for the Glen team, in my view.
No, that's what I was going to get to, Joe. Is that Malachy O'Rourke said that he wouldn't be in favour of pursuing it. I think I don't want to paraphrase him too much, but essentially that was his line on it. Whereas the county chairman, or the club chairman, pardon me, said that it would be something that they'd look into. But there is a point there, and there is a lot of validity to what you say, in that it should not be in either Kilmacud or Glen's hands to raise this thing. Their GA have the responsibility to oversee the officiating of these matches, and whether it's the junior final last week, where there was a flurry of red cards towards late in the game, they have a duty to go and pursue the referee, to have his point of view on that game. Similarly, they should be straight in contact with with all three match officials, and then subsequently to get the views of both clubs, to have an informed, overarching view on this.
That's not relevant in relation to part one of the rules. Part two of the rules, that's the referee's province, and then the referee's overseen in relation to that. This part of the rules is different. Interestingly, Robbie Brennan, the Kilmacud manager, when he was playing for Dunboyne in 2005, they played a Meath Championship semi-final against Navan O'Mahony's, and Navan O'Mahony's, it seems to have been accepted, inadvertently played a fourth substitute during extra time. Dunboyne appealed that. Navan O'Mahony's were expelled from the championship, and Dunboyne went on to play in the county final. The substitute who'd been wrongly brought on didn't even touch the ball. But the point was that the integrity of the game has to be protected. So let me broaden this out slightly.
Okay.
Let's say this was Dublin versus Mayo 2017 epic final, or 2016. Both years, Mayo lose by a point. Both years, Mayo are besieging the Dubs with 2 or 3 minutes to go to try and get that equalising score. Let's say Dublin had made a substitution. The substitute didn't come off, and instead of coming off, went to the heart of the Dublin defence and participated in the defence of the Dublin goal. Well, there'd be an outcry in the global GA community. The GA would have already announced their inquiry, and I think probably by tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest, a replay would be ordered. What's the difference? You know, Glen Maghera may be a very small parochial club in Derry with their sponsor. We were sort of talking about this morning. Their sponsor is the Spar Shop in Maghera. Kilmacud may be a sort of a GA superpower. Their sponsor is a chain of private hospitals, a healthcare sort of conglomerate. Why should Glen Maghera be treated any differently than a powerful team that comes to Croke Park and infringes the rules in this way? And I think that this is in danger of, and I think it is already tainting Kilmacud's victory through no fault of their own. I mean, we don't know what the position is. The substitute clearly was substituted. There could be no doubt about that. He went and took his place on the line. For me, I don't think that it would be honourable to order forfeiture of the game unless you were able to show, for example, that this was a deliberate decision from the sideline. Look, stay on, tell him to stay on, tell him to get on that line for the last play. I think that the honourable course here is for the GAA to say, look, a blatant breach has taken place, and we'll order a replay. And I think that they will inevitably do that if Glen make the decision to send that email, because that's all they have to do here. They don't have to participate in this, and they won't be expected to participate in this. This will be a matter for the GAA then to operate its own rule.
Should the GAA not be showing more leadership in all this, though?
Well, obviously they should. I mean, it's an example of rank cowardice.
And if they defend themselves, and
it wouldn't happen if it was the Dubs. It wouldn't happen if it was a powerful county in Croke Park. It would already be dealt with. But here the thing is, look, tell you what, we'll throw this on to Glen Maghera. There's a bit of hassle around fixtures here. The National League's starting. Who really cares about Glen Maghera anyway? We'll put the pressure on them. We won't use our power under 644, and we'll hope that Maghera don't send us that email, because if they do, then we're going to have to act. And
like you're saying, if this was the Dubs and Mayo, that there would be holy war, and I, to a degree, I can see that. If this turns out to just be a fine for Kilmacud out of the back of this, what would your reaction be?
Now, look, I mean, I think it would establish a very dangerous precedent. It would mean that teams would say, look, we're in extra time here now. There's 2 or 3 minutes to go. We'll fire on subs. We'll instruct them. Look, don't find the substitute. Just run on, stay on. I'm sure if we have to take a fine, we'll take a fine. We can absorb that. It's a very dangerous precedent. It's corrosive to the rules of the game, and people say, like, what's the real point of the rules of the game then? And what is the point?
Does that,
if you can just say, well, look, 16 players can go on the field in an All-Ireland club final and defend the last play against 15 men, with one of them, with the 16th man, the guy who was supposed to be taken off, standing on the goal line. Well, what might be?
Is there a precedent the other way, though, Joe?
More fundamental breach than that.
Joe, is there a precedent the other way whereby if you're saying that this infringement warrants, obviously does warrant further investigation, a replay might be the outcome of that?
Why does it warrant further investigation?
Well,
it's clear what happened.
Well, my point is that they're clearly going to look into this and they're going to have an outcome one way or the other from it.
They're not going to unless Glenn lodge an objection.
And Glenn, you would imagine, are going to lodge an objection, surely.
I mean, it's not a matter for me, but I think that it must be inevitable because it's grossly unsporting and grossly unfair in the circumstances.
Okay, well, further down the line, can you see a point where, unless there is more formality brought into how substitutes are introduced or taken off the pitch, that this could work the other way, whereby teams could raise an objection to people being on the pitch, 16 players being on the pitch, 17 players, whoever it might be, being on the pitch, in a similar circumstance to the way Paul Mannion was yesterday? That he's over not interfering with the game, but they'll say, oh, well, he's on the pitch. There's a precedent set for like back in the club final when Kilmacud obviously had too many players there. Why did he have to be interfering with play? He didn't touch the ball.
I know, but I mean, this is why the rule gives discretion in relation to the penalty. It doesn't give discretion in relation to the offence having been committed, but it says that you can have a fine, forfeiture, or a replay depending on the circumstances. And so in Paul's situation, no one would suggest, well, look, this would be way over the top to go to the second offence. I mean, or to go to the second penalty. This will be comfortably dealt with by a fine. As I say, it's like an incursion by the water carrier when he hasn't been given permission by the fourth official.
Mm-hmm. When Charlie Redmond obviously didn't, make his way off after being sent off in the '95 final against Tyrone, should Tyrone have had a replay then?
I'm not sure what the rule was then. But, I mean, I think a good example of the GAA protecting its integrity was whenever Offaly played Clare in the All-Ireland hurling semi-final. And the referee mistakenly played 3 minutes short of the regulation time. Okay, now the regulation time, the basic regulation time, is not within the discretion of the referee. It's like this matter. It's part one. And whenever it was discovered that he'd played 3 minutes short, Clare won the game, don't forget. They were on their way to the All-Ireland final. It's done and dusted, celebrating all the rest of it. A replay was ordered. Offaly won the replay and went on to win the All-Ireland hurling final that year. The point being that the integrity of the GAA was protected. The GAA's reputation was protected. And so far as the GAA are concerned, in this matter, on a part one matter, it's nothing to do with the individual teams. This is to do with the GAA protecting its own rules, protecting its own reputation, its own integrity. That's what I'm concerned about. I mean, Glenn, Waddy Grahams have always been ferocious rivals of my club, Dungiven. I'm not concerned individually with the Waddy Grahams situation. They had many chances to win the game. They should have gone on and win it, as far as I'm concerned. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in us becoming a sort of a laughingstock, the IRFU looking at us and saying, Jesus, it's fucking Wild West there, And that's what it is at the moment. I am so disappointed that the GAA washed its hand of this today. Instead of saying, look, there's clearly been a breach. We're going to investigate this. There are very limited options here. Clearly a fine isn't appropriate where a 16th man is on the field defending the critical last play in the game. Otherwise, what sort of a precedent are we setting? We set down a replay. We take it away from the Waddies. We take it away from Kilmacud Crooks. And we do the correct thing.
All right, we'll watch this one with interest. Joe Brolly, for now, thanks so much for taking time out to speak to us this afternoon, Stephen.
My great pleasure.
Cheers, Joe.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliator.